participants has joined us. So it's really an incredible success for a collective effort of all of us. So how we have designed today's seminar is that we are coming up with two PAHP panels. Panel one is all about makers of the policy. And we are really thankful to those guys who led the policy, and they are here to present that. And then we got another panel that's a reviewer of the policy. And from national perspective to the provincial perspective to the academic industry, we would like to see the policy and review the policy with a 360-degree horizon. But before that, I start introducing each panelist, it would be good that we got a small video, thanks to our Federal Ministry of Housing and Works, and panel one, that is just an intro of that why and how Pakistan started revising its policy. So I'll request my team that if you can quickly run the 2 minutes intro video, please.
Half of our population will live in urban areas. With this surge, the demand for adequate housing has reached critical levels. In response, the National Housing Policy 2001 was introduced. It was a comprehensive effort aimed at ensuring affordable, accessible shelter for all. Yet, fell short in implementation, overshadowed by outdated regulations, limited financing, and unplanned urban growth. Then came the 18th Amendment, devolving housing responsibilities to the provinces. New authorities and regulations emerged, but the housing crisis continued. Slums expanded, now covering over 50% of all urban footprint. A staggering reality behind the numbers that suggest most Pakistanis own their homes. Recognizing the gaps, the Ministry of Housing and Works formed a committee of experts to address Pakistan. Their mission: to reflect, reimagine, and rebuild a housing strategy that works, one grounded in reality and rooted in action. The Joint Action Policy 2025 takes out a practical framework and champions land reforms, access to finance, inclusive urban planning, rural and low-cost housing, and climate-resilient infrastructure. It embraces innovation, vertical growth, and public-private collaboration, all to bridge the 9 million housing unit deficit we face today. But housing is more than just one. It's dignity, safety, and opportunity. With commitment and coordination, Pakistan can ensure that every citizen has a place. The future of housing is not just in policy, it's in progress. National Housing Policy 2025. Adequate, affordable, sustainable housing for all.
Thank you very much, team. So let me begin with our panel one. And the first of all, foremost will be coming Waseem Bajwa Sahab. Mr. Waseem Bajwa is currently serving as Director General Planning and Policy, CEO of PIDCL, and MD of National Construction. But the most important that he chairs the National Housing Policy Committee and serves as Secretary to the Prime Minister's Housing Task Force. And with his prior roles in CDA, NEFDA, Federal Government Employees Housing Authority, FBR, he brings deep experience. And he'll be sharing with us the National Housing Policy 2025 draft, its key themes, and the federal government strategic role in devising that. So the floor is over to Waseem Bajwa Sahab. As we have promised with all of the panelists that we will be giving 10 minutes to each, but since Waseem Bajwa had been leading and been the chair of the committee, so he's taking a bit of margin from us, and we are giving him around 12 to 15 minutes. Bajwa Sahab, I'll be giving you a nudge around 12 minutes, and our team will be sharing the slide. So request to my team to start sharing the slides, and Bajwa Sahab, floor is over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good initiative on part of Punjab Affordable Housing Program. In fact, without your collaboration and your support, it was not possible to take all the stakeholders on board. So I start with it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you all the team and everyone. We started this program, this policy basically about 6 months back, and we plan to conclude it by June, but the Prime Minister office has reduced our timelines and we are supposed to deliver it in March. But now we are looking during this month or by the mid of May, inshallah. It is important that we understand the difference between policy, program, and project, because we have been receiving a number of critical reviews, critiques, way forwards, all that. That is very I would say, encouraging. Basically, the critique you make just help us to improve the document we are preparing. But the policy, it is always it has a holistic point of view. It gives you broader principles, objectives, goals, and everything. And when you go into the program, it is more specific. It has a limited scope. It basically goes for the implementation of the policy, and it is always everywhere that the policies are made by the federal governments, and it is implemented by the state governments or the provincial governments. We have examples of Canada, US, even within the South Asia, number of countries, they have prepared their national housing policy. And by virtue of the 18th Amendment and all that, we understand the implementation and the major steps have to be taken by the provincial governments. So I start with it. I will not take much time. I will skim through the policy, the major themes. We understand that housing is a basic human right as defined by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. The housing policy was formulated in 2001, and there have been a number of initiatives during that period, but we have been unable to formulate a holistic and a wholesome policy during these periods. So it is the right time. 24 years have passed. We should improve it. Next, please. This is the crisis. We understand the population. We understand the urban growth, and now the housing backlog stands at 10 million, and there is an incremental backlog as well, about 0.3 million, 300,000 adding every year. So as far the policy framework is concerned, if we look forward, if we go up to 2050 or after 10 years, it may go up to 12 million, 13 million. And another alarming aspect is that 50% of the population is living in informal settlements, primarily in the major urban centers. Next, please. So this is how we started. This is the policy formulation process. We reviewed the existing policy. We engaged with different stakeholders. Up till now, we have been engaging with the policy experts, with the urban planner. Alhamdulillah, I am also an urban planner. My degree is in urban planning. So with focus group discussions, now this is a broader aspect, thanks to Punjab Housing, Affordable Housing Program, that they gave this platform, because from here, the policy level, we have to delve downward. So this will hopefully conclude. We already got some input from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Sindh, Balochistan, and even from GB and Kashmir. So we will now move forward. Next, please. These are the key housing challenges mentioned in Housing Policy 2001. We understand some of the challenges will remain as it is, like the financial constraint, informal settlement. Basic is obviously housing shortage, and then the rising costs. So we have accordingly reviewed it. So what are the gaps? Next, please. Obviously, the current housing challenge, I've already mentioned, will remain, and the intensity has also increased. Please, next. So these are the basic gaps identified. So in that housing policy, I just receive some of the comments that it is an old wine in the new bottle. So it is always like that. We cannot just go away with the basic principles, the basic concepts, the basic things that will obviously remain the same. We have to improve upon it. So a number of things have not been covered in those in 2001 policy, particularly with regard to access to finance, then vertical housing, transit-oriented development, obviously the new concepts of climate resilient, green housing concept, smart cities, and then obviously then another aspect, the institutional framework. We have been talking about some. It's to devolve it to the local government level, and it should be like that. But unfortunately, we don't have a vibrant third tier in our government. And then we also added the implementation mechanism in it. We basically we upgraded the 2001 housing policy in the first instance and added new concepts which are missing in that policy. Next, please. We have devised this vision statement. What we are looking at is to provide adequate, affordable, and sustainable housing for all. And this is our policy goal, obviously, adequate supply of affordable housing. It is everywhere, even with Punjab Affordable Housing Program. This is their initiative, and this is our main initiative. We started with this in the previous government. We are on it with this government, and Prime Minister is very keen to give a affordable housing framework in the coming months, inshallah. And for that, by virtue of the housing task force, we have worked a lot. We have just tried to take care of all the issues like taxation, access to finance, urban planning, and then we are coming up with the framework of inshallah, and that will help the provinces as well to move forward. Next, please. So these are the key housing policy objectives. First, obviously, the supply expansion. I've been talking that it may reach to more than 12 million. We are looking forward for smart development. Financial access is always a key to any program or policy, rather program I will mention, because at the implementation level, the principles have to take forward, and we don't have a proper mortgage finance system. We don't have a collaboration with the private sector. It will not go ahead. Sustainability is an important factor which pertains to energy efficient, climate resilient, and the new and the latest tech in the design and construction. Obviously, urban regeneration to address the slums and 𝐋𝐺 and to use the prime land within our cities. That is an important aspect we need to take care. For that, we should go forward with some laws and acts, and so that it can be implemented. Vertical development, we are looking forward. And last but not the least, the National Housing Repository. We have to establish the data bank so we know what is going on in from all the tiers, whether the federal, provincial, or the local government. Next, please. So these are the themes. So I will not go into the detail because of the paucity of the time we have. We have other panelists as well. So we will be rather looking forward for a more input on these themes. Primarily, we just took the themes from the housing policy 2001, and we added 3-4 themes in it. Land for housing, it is, we understand, the basic commodity, the very basic from where we have to start, housing finance, then construction services, planning and development of intermediate towns, slum, 𝐋𝐺 and squatter settlements. Obviously, then another important theme that we look forward is the affordable low-cost housing in the rural areas as well, and then in the form of rental housing. Basically, rental housing, it means we are looking forward for affordable housing. And another important theme, which is the latest one, is the green, energy efficient, climate and disaster resilient housing. Within it, we'll add the smart city. We have covered the institutional legal framework, and last but not the least, obviously, the capacity building and knowledge sharing is important. If we don't do it, we should have a clear line to move forward, which should trickle down from the policy level to the objectives and other projects we are looking forward. Next, please. So I will just move a bit fast on these issues because it has already been shared with you in the form of a text document. So these are some of the issues in land. Then we have given some policy measures. Just please move forward. Some of the policies, typical policies, these are we used to study all the urban planners. They know that we used to study this policy land banking and pooling strategies. It still holds good because we have to create affordable housing for low and middle income. Then we have to pool our resources within the government, through joint ventures, through public-private partnership, whatsoever it is, so that we have a sizable land bank to establish or to move forward with the affordable or the otherwise housing program, if any. Next, please. Obviously, to combat speculation and all that, we have to establish a land record, and Punjab is already way ahead in it, and other provinces should also join. And at the federal level, we will also develop it in the form of land information system. Next, please. Housing finance, an important theme. And during our task force, the Prime Minister's Housing Task Force meeting, we have specifically worked on that. Two aspects we are dealing in it. One is the taxation, and another is the mortgage finances. In taxation, hopefully in the coming months, particularly with regard to the sale, purchase, and transaction costs will be reduced, and some other hindrances with respect to the construction sector will also be done away. As far as mortgage financing, unfortunately, we have been, our banking sector has never been so proactive in this regard. So that's why our mortgage to finance ratio is only 0.3% of the GDP, which is the lowest in the world. So we have tried to resolve their issues. We have taken them on board. What we are giving them incentives with the help of State Bank and Ministry of Finance, and obviously it will help in moving forward. As far as in the beginning, we will try to give some sort of subsidies, which we understand we have some limitations because of the international program. But however, whatsoever is possible, we will do for that. Next, please. So these are the key housing finance challenges: foreclosure law, borrowing costs, short-term loans, and complex registration. So we have tried to address these issues at the federal level. Next, please.
Waseem Saab, will request for expedite. 2 minutes left, please.
Okay, thank you. Just go to the last slides. Just rather keep on going so that I just housing finance. Okay, next, please. So construction services, technology, and building measures. I will only just go through the policy solutions with regard to the cost-effective using building information systems. All the new technologies we are trying to building. Next, please. Next. Please come to theme 4. Planning and development of intermediate and secondary towns. This is very important. I think Islamabad was the last planned town we have built. At the mega level, we have not done anything. But fortunately, we do have some satellite towns we are building in Islamabad, in Lahore as well. But these towns and cities should be totally independent with all the facilities. Next, please. Next, please move forward. Sorry, it is a lengthy. All the themes have to cover the issues and everything. Slums and Kachi Badis, we look forward with regard to the urban renewal and urban regeneration policies. Next, please. Next. Please move forward. So this is an important theme: affordable housing and low-cost rural and rental housing. It will basically encompass all the things. We will just put all our workings and the different themes into this part to develop a framework with regard to vertical development, land, and everything, even access to finance. Please move forward. I'm in my last minute, so I'll go. Obviously, this aspect was also missing in the previous policy, the rural housing, and we will cover, and Dr. Fariha will explain a lot on it. Please move forward, please. Yes, please. Even we have covered housing for marginalized and disabled people. So the theme 7, green, energy efficient, climate and disaster resilient housing. So this is an important aspect. This is the new concept and we have to build on it. Next, please. Please move forward. Okay. Institutional and legal framework that is for all the tiers of the government. So the gaps we have identified and how to fill it, so that we have a proper coherence to address the housing policy formulated at the federal level. Next, please. So you can see we have covered all the three tiers of the government. And then we just come to the planning, zoning, and building reforms. Obviously, the master planning, the structure plan, the action area plans, the local plans, all the things, even with regard to building codes, so that need to be aligned. Aaj in the aakhir pe we just close it down. Okay. Capacity building and knowledge sharing, that is important. I've just already explained it a bit. Okay, please move forward. So this is important, obviously, with regard to the housing policy implementation and monitoring review. So once we have covered all over, but at the end of it, if we don't have an implementation, monitoring, and review system, it will not work. That was the basic thing which lacked in the Housing Policy 2001. With all this, I just conclude my presentation. It was positive time, whatever I can just give it to you. I tried my level best. Rest, house is open for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Waseem Saab. So just a permission, because a lot of participants are asking for the slides. If you allow, we can start sharing in WhatsApp groups and social media, because there's a lot of experts who would like to actually help us in improving it.
Definitely. We should be open to everyone, and critique in whatsoever manner it is always welcoming, and it improves the subject. Thank you, Mahar. Thank you.
And sir, our request will be, because after that, reviewers panel will be also coming, and then we'll be opening our session from a wider audience, that they can come up in the chat box also, in question answers format also, and they themselves can directly ask the question. So if you can stay with us till the last moment, that will be incredibly helpful. So we move towards our panel, the number 1 panel, our panelist number 2, that is Khurram Farid Sahab. And Khurram Farid Sahab is bringing an interesting perspective. Waseem Saab has built national housing policy from a government point of view, but Khurram Saab is bringing a private sector perspective, that once a private sector expert joined this exercise, so what kind of the attributes, challenges, and their contributions for the making of this policy. A short intro for Khurram Saab is he's a principal planner at 𝐋𝐚𝐧𝒔 Limited, with over 25 years experience in urban planning, policy, and governance. He's holding a master's degree from New York University, and he has led transformative projects shaping cities in Pakistan and abroad. He also advises on national policies and champions sustainable urban development. So Khurram Saab, over to you. Though we allotted 10 minutes, but if you can be super fast, end it in 8 minutes, it will give us the reviewers more time to actually contribute their side. Khurram Saab, over to you, please.
Thank you, Imran Saab, for organizing such a wonderful event. And I'm really grateful under the leadership of Waseem Bajwa Saab that we have finally were able to review and draft a new housing policy, keeping in view the challenges which Pakistan has been facing. It's not that this policy after 2001, there was not any attempt to revise or draft a new policy. There were many, but because of Bajwa Saab leadership, it is happening, and it is going to be happen. And the process which we have adopted, it's very transparent and clear. Experts from all across the Pakistan, they have been giving their inputs, and that's how this draft has been brought forward. As Bajwa has already explained and given the presentation on draft housing policy, as a private entrepreneur, I would we although addressed so many aspects which we thought that these needed to be part of national housing policy, in terms that when we discuss policy, being a student and of public policy as well, what we try to do, the policy interventions, they are not coherent, and they are drafted as a top-down approach, and the end user, they might not get those results. So we had made sure that even for the marginalized communities, this policy has addressed the issues which were there. So I'll quickly go through my presentation. It's a long presentation, but I will jump to some important one, so that can you all see my slide?
Oh, sir.
Okay. So what we see in terms of Pakistan, like at independence, we were over 35 million, and we have crossed 240 million population in just 75 years. There has been a lot of debate that Pakistan has no housing crisis as when it comes to census data, but it shows that over 35 million units are there in Pakistan. But when we further dig into details, over 12 million housing units which are kachas and semi-pakas. Those are the units which needed to be addressed, and in the housing census it shows that though they are houses, but in any modern living or civic living, we cannot declare them housing. And at the same time, there are challenges which when we see that the housing has been addressed, but in a single unit there are multiple occupants are living, and that also shows that the housing has been provided. So when we have to address those challenges, we did see the housing, what was lacking, what were the shortcomings of National Housing Policy 2001. And then let me see.
Khurram Sahab, excuse me, your slides are also not moving. It's not full screen. So if you can help us out. Yeah, maybe resharing and then putting a full screen will help.
Okay, I'm sharing. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, but you need to put it on the full screen. And right now we can see the slide Understanding the National Housing Policy 2001.
Okay. Okay, as Bajwa said that we had 9 thematic groups covering more or less all areas which were required for a national housing policy. There were three thematic areas which were not addressed within 2001 policy, but within land and land use development and other sub-thematic areas, we added few more very important sector which are going to be way forward for effective implementation of the policy. These are the thematic areas which have already been discussed. So jumping towards how we have compared 2001 policy and National Housing Policy Draft 2025. Policy role of state. It enables, but we have provided institutional restructuring for delivery. Same we have addressed for land for housing, digital land mapping, public land banks, and equitable land allocation. Housing finance, I strongly still believe that if we address and if we can simply start catering, providing housing finance, we will address two challenges. First, the shortage of housing. It will be amicably be met up, but at the same time, the amount of urban sprawl our cities are facing right now, people will start buying direct houses instead of plots. So it will support if we encourage housing finance, and at the same time, the more construction industry related to construction, they will be flourishing within Pakistan. So there are challenges in rental housing as of today, and it has clearly addressed in 2025 policy. Slum upgradation, urban regeneration, as Bajwa Sahab has already mentioned, more than 50% of the population in our urban areas that is living in informal housing. Those are slums, 𝐋𝐴 and even the towns which were planned in 60s and 70s, their condition has been so deteriorated that they needed to be updated, and especially cities like Lahore, Faisalabad, Rawalpindi, and Multan in terms of Punjab, and even in case of Peshawar, where we have public transport, then we need to integrate the TOD concept, and so that the public infrastructure which has already been placed, that is going to be sustainable by the simple interventions. Construction technology and industry, we have emphasized on green construction, prefabricated construction materials, and innovative technologies. And at the same time, a legal and institutional framework. We have proposed clear roles for post-revolution, local government empowerment, and interagency coordination. Instead of what's happening at the moment in Pakistan, that our existing cities are expanding. The infrastructure which we were dependent, which was laid in 80s and 90s and even 2000s, with so much commercialization, which is quite common in case of Pakistani cities. A lot of pressure is on existing infrastructure, which is outdated and obsolete. So instead of putting burden on existing infrastructure, it's the right approach that we start planning intermediate new cities. Like in British period, they introduced Mandi towns, but as we only could see, Islamabad was the last city which we planned. We have city urban sprawl along existing cities, but in some cases they are even bigger than the existing cities. But we need to plan new towns and cities all over Pakistan, where agricultural land is not agricultural land is not compromised. Climate resilience, we see 65% there is decrease in rainwater or rainfall in alone in this year, and then at the same time floods, and the heat wave is just around the corner. So for that, we need to innovate in a type of construction we are having, how resilient infrastructure, not only for housing and and at the town level, we can build so that the whole chapter is addressing climate and resilience structures. So target groups, low income, women-led housing, marginalized communities, those has already been addressed. And for data monitoring, coordination, and effective implementation, different frameworks and JS-based reporting has been proposed. And
Thank you, Khurram
last
sir.
but
If you
not
can take a minute to just conclude that.
yeah.
So we'll be
So
proceeding.
this was the outcome of the overall policy, different measures. And your question about how private sector can ensure that housing policy is effective in this manner. First of all, we have to ensure that there is enabling environment for private sector. And then the continuation of immediate past policies. In the previous regime, if certain rules and regulation and certain incentives were given to private sectors, their continuation should be ensured so that if the new schemes, the new projects are coming, there is not skepticism in order to take these issues. And then innovation, in order to innovate construction technology all over the world, prefab and modular construction is in place. So we have to encourage private sector and incentivize in terms of the tax levies so that they can import those technologies and start building smart and climate resilient structure. So this is it from my side. So I would like to hear more from the other panelists. Please go through this whole draft, and if there is anything you can always come up with suggestions. We have received so many positive and critique reviews from all of you, and we are still welcome. If there is anything, we will be incorporating those. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Waseem Saab. Thank you very much, Khurram Saab, that you have laid the foundation from where onwards that our reviewer panelists can start actually picking the gaps and start helping us at how to bridge those. So the second panel that we are bringing 6 incredible panelists, and specifically we are bringing a lot of doctors. And Khurram Saab and Waseem Saab, you need not to fear that they might not be bringing hammers or scissors. Rather, they got the medicines which will help us how to cure some of the gaps. So first of all, doctor is Dr. Nasir Javed. He don't need any introduction, but still, because a lot of participants might be from other countries, that's why he's a senior civil servant. He has led so many organizations. He had been a regular providing consultancy services to the institutions like ADB, UNICEF, UNDP, WWF LEAD. But foremost and the most important, that he's the guy who designed and established the urban unit, one of the leading intellectual arm for government of Punjab, also in Pakistan, also in order to take the urban strategy forward. So Dr. Saab, over to you for reviewing the policy and helping us out how to improve it. And we'll be giving you 10 minutes, sir. Thank you.
First of all, these are all good thanks, and this is a good initiative. I must appreciate it. Basically, my viewpoint main is about general comments, not very specific on these points. I have already given some specific comments in the shared with the group. What exactly is the policy needs, in my understanding, very clarity to understand that if all the electrons in a wire are moving in one direction, it generates electricity. And what actually is policy is the same thing that all the stakeholders from the federal government right up to the house owners and the rented people, they should all know exactly what is the direction of the housing sector for the next 10 years. So the policy should actually give this direction, and this is the fundamental litmus test to see what the outcome of the policy is going to be and how good a policy is. With this, the second point that I have already emphasized and to some extent was covered by Bajwa Saab, that we need a good diagnostics at the national level. Where are we exact housing statistics. Some of the data actually is quite debatable and needs to be taken with a pinch of salt, like the shortage of 9 million households. Where are those 63, 60 million plus people living in, and that too only in urban areas? I can't understand that. Just quoting some glossy report is not good enough. What is our institutional landscape? What is our legal and regulatory landscape? Existing other laws, a lot of things have changed since 2001. And more importantly, what happened to our last policy? Definitions are very essential. We still not very clear what is an affordable house. Even housing is not very clear. My understanding is housing is where people can live, but somehow the other we make it synonymous with owning a house. Even in Saudi Arabia and USA, more than 70% people are living in rental houses. Why are we not considering rental housing a housing? So the implication is that a lot of taxations and regulatory issues which are hampering the rental market in Pakistan, which is less than 13%, one of the lowest in the world. Informal slums and 𝐋𝐶 abadis. What exactly we mean by these? It's totally confusing, and we use this synonymously with each other. And there are many other issues, definitely words, jargon used that we need to define. And I think that is very essential so that everyone is very clear what we are talking about. The second diagnostic we need is the numbers and the data. The population, the demographics, urbanization level, houses typology, and of course the cost analytics, what percentage is land, materials, labor, and taxation. In diagnostics, I believe housing is a market. So in the market, we need to understand the market segmentation. And market segmentation is essentially of two levels at least. There could be many others. The first is demographic. All the 240 million people and the 50 million households are not the same. There are students who need single accommodation. Islamabad has 27 universities. How many hostels do we have? Where do those students are living? We have young starting couples who need small accommodation. We have big family units who may be needing 6 house. We have retirees. I know of at least 20 people who are old couples living in 2 canal house. They don't need that 2 canal house. So on and so forth. So we need diagnostics on the market segmentation of demographically so that we can know exactly what the demand, housing demand is. Unless we know the demand, we can't actually manage the supply. The second is market segmentation in terms of socioeconomic. If I have a lot of money, I can buy the house in 15 minutes. That is the ultra rich. And for them, there is more than abundant housing supply for the next 50 years. Rest assured, we have 1:5 ratio of demand and supply. If we go to we leave the destitutes. If we go to the lowest socioeconomic category, we have 0.15 to 0.2 house supply against demand of 1. So that mismatch needs to be fully understood, documented, and addressed in the policy. We don't need a policy for the rich people. Maybe we need some constraints on the rich housing to bring the median to the median housing cost to the lower side. Then policy needs to set a goal. As Alice in Wonderland said, if you don't know where we have to go, then any road will take you there. So we need to know exactly that if this is a 10 years policy, where are we today and where are we going to be in 2035? Peter Drucker had said, if we cannot measure anything, we cannot manage anything. Subjective policies and other things won't probably help us measure those things. So as much as possible, we should have quantifiable policy measures. In the current policy, we have 217 policy measures, very comprehensive, covers everything. But then as Imran has rightly said, I am a medical doctor, and it is very good to give a general health advice to the population. Acha khaya kare, take good food, take vitamins, do some good walks, sunshine. But then what is exactly the patient's illness? Have we identified those problems? And are we suggesting very specific measures? Are we giving just general good advice? So these 217 policy measures absolutely cover everything under the sun and maybe beyond that. But what we need is a more specific specific policy measures that would need prioritization in the next 10 years. So whereas we need policy measures, the policy should also give prioritization. And the policy needs to give a direction, as I said. For example, is housing going to be a market, private market, or it is the government's responsibility? Some of the sentences in policy do mention that, to provide a house to everyone. I think we should be very clear on this direction, fundamental direction. Two, what are we promoting? Only own housing. Rental is just appendix or by footnote reference, coupled with the rural housing and other things. Whereas in my opinion, looking at the market segmentation, we should be focusing more on the rental, and rental is a market which is discouraged by the government policies. I have evidence to show that. What are we talking of sprawl and densities? The policy mentions high rises. I think what we need is more of mid rises rather than high rises. Then there is the urban versus rural. We are discouraging urbanization, for God's sake, in 21st century. What are we saying that? Even our definition of urban is not correct. Pakistan is not 37% urban. If we go by the physical definition of urban, it's at least 50%. That 37% is only administrator of municipal corporations. So we need to be clear on that. What are we promoting? Plot versus build. Government schemes themselves are just offering plots. Why are we just... And then there is this malaise of file. So file, plot, and how unit. What are we talking? Taxes are very, very important, especially when it comes to rental. In Punjab, if you are renting a house, you pay 5 times more property tax, and then you pay a federal government income tax on top of that, and 20 plus taxes are there. What are we encouraging? Greenfield versus brownfield. There is a lot of scope for urban regeneration. Then when it comes to institutional measures, okay, it covers everything institutional, but we need to be very clear what is the role of the government, what is the role of a regulator like authorities, and what is the role of the private sector. So usually it is the governance triangle which dictates that policy making, regulation, and service provision needs to be in 3 separate entities, usually policy by the government, regulation by the authority, and service provision by the private sector. We should clarify that government will provide houses or government will act as a facilitator and regulator. Thank you very much. These are my main comments, and I am open for any question answers if we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That was super fast, super smart, and you were right on target. So moving on to that, as Waseem Saab said, that housing has become an operational subject after 18 Amendment in Pakistan. So it's very important that once we are building national housing policy, how our provinces are taking forward according to their own ground realities. So we'll be opening our next provincial perspective from Dr. Noman Ahmed. Dr. Noman Ahmed is an architect and urban planner with degrees from NLD University, MITU, Ankara, Loughborough University, and Harvard. He's a dean at NLD University and has authored books on Karachi's urban issues. He received HEC's Best Teacher Award and Rice for Dawn and the News. But just like Dr. Nasir Javed, Dr. Noman Ahmed also doesn't require any kind of introduction. Dr. Noman Saab, over to you for Singh perspective. And you got the 10 minutes also. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Imran Saab. And I think the scene has been set by the learned speakers who spoke before me. I would just request the team to kindly put up my slides. My comments are also focused on the National Housing Policy document that was sent to us, and also some of the issues that arise specifically from the perspective of the themes that have been identified, and also some references from the province of Sindh. So I'll start talking about giving the reference that in the case of policy making, I think there has been a remarkable shift since the policy in 2001 was formulated. That was the time that Pakistan was under a military regime, and there was a governance structure devised almost entirely from the scratch, meaning that emphasis was given to the local governments. A new local government ordinance was put in place, and that local government ordinance basically tried to empower uh, governments at the district level, somehow diluting the role of the provincial governments. In a total contrast, what happened afterwards is that the provinces acquired newfound financial and administrative strength as a consequence of 18 constitutional amendments, and now they have an extremely significant role to play. We talk about housing and other development sectors that they have to address. And obviously, the role of federal government is getting limited, perhaps to the advisory capacity and few other limited roles. But then we also need to see that what did the provincial governments did? Provincial governments, interestingly speaking, only contributed to housing when the disasters struck, be it the disaster of 2005 or the earthquakes of 2005 in KPK or the 2008 earthquake in Ziyarat or the 2013 earthquake in Avaran or the rains and floods in Sindh in 2010 and 2020 and 2022. And they thought that to deal with housing during the situation of disaster is something that is very desirable. And I think that's like really interesting. So I believe that is one specific issue to ponder, that how interested the provincial governments are in dealing with housing and using housing as a specific trigger of development to have their respective populations. The other issue is, which was very ably talked about by Dr. Nasir Javed, is about the market. We have land markets in the city, but in the country, in various cities and in various regions that operate around the urban and peri-urban areas. But all of these land markets are opaque, inefficient, and unregulated. No one knows that how decision-making, officially speaking, is undertaken and how land grants and allocation of land for housing, in some cases under the garb of real estate, is made. The example of Bahria Town, Karachi, and the DHA city, Karachi, and many similar interventions are examples. The policy and plan making obviously seldom benefits from the implementable upscaling of innovative and successful pilot projects. Whatever little we know about policy is that usually policy builds upon experiences. And we have wealth of experiences in different parts of Pakistan, including Sindh, which we can learn from and possibly incorporate as policy instruments in our housing policy. The example of incremental housing scheme in Khuda Ki Basti is a case in point, where it was known that if targeted land supply is undertaken with the institutional support, the communities are able to deal with the issue of housing, especially the underprivileged communities, reasonably well. Then there were certain interventions done as a consequence of the learning from Khuda Ki Basti. There was a specific law promulgated in Sindh. It was called as the Sindh Disposal of Urban Land Ordinance in 2002. And one of the major focal points of this law was that the land supply for housing will be done in a targeted manner with institutional supervision, and open speculative schemes will be discouraged. Unfortunately, the powers that be, they got together, and this law was in fact repealed back in 2006. So this is also something that we need to learn from. Khuda Ki Basti is often taken as a housing solution. I think it, as a pilot project, it tried to inform the policy making process that by in fact changing the mode of land supply and also providing institutional support, enormous amount of benefit can be acquired. The common challenges that we come across in respect to the housing issue is that there are diminishing options for the underprivileged, and these are becoming extremely difficult to access with the passage of time. Social housing has become extremely limited because obviously it is not the job of the government to provide housing subsidy or direct development of housing on a large scale. Access to land for housing is also becoming extremely difficult because in many cases we find that land is not considered as a social asset as it used to be. Despite its finite status, it is now traded openly as a commodity, and this is a challenge because land is again something that is limited. If we take Karachi as a microcosm of Pakistan and try to see that how it has ventured as far as housing is concerned, we find that the housing need in Karachi builds upon four fundamental factors. There is a natural population growth. There is a huge migratory load that Karachi experiences every month, perhaps. There is a backlog because housing needs, when not fulfilled, continue to rise as a backlog, and that adds to the unfulfilled status. And then there is also a huge replacement need for housing that has well past its design life, for the housing that has been affected by natural and man-made disasters and has rendered that housing stock unfit for habitation. The fundamental question that arises in this situation, or perhaps the policy may consider addressing, is that how do ordinary people negotiate their right to housing in everyday interactions that have long been associated with deregulated governance, inequality, and insecurity in the megapolis. And this continues to haunt us. And I believe that many other cities, large cities, can also be a witness to this particular observation. If we look at the status of people, different categories of people, different strata of the society, I think it is a very disjointed scenario. We find that the affluent have multiple options: exclusive land supply, targeted land supply for specific categories, including the military in this country. We have high-end realtors providing completely built up and serviceable housing. They have enough capital to invest, and obviously these people have a sizable control on land supply mechanisms also. So at least for Karachi, one can say that about 1% of the city population owns an appropriate or at least influences 58% of the total residential land in the city, and this is a hugely disproportionate figure. The middle income often tries to build housing on their own in available options of land. They are dependent upon the builder and developer built housing, which is quite questionable when it comes to conditions and also the design and construction. Apartments in smaller units are often available to them, not according to their aspirations and overall financial and social capacities. They keep adding floors to the existing housing stock, which becomes a regulatory issue, a very burning issue right away in Karachi for the time being, when the building regulations are abruptly revised. And in some cases, we also find the middle income now moving into unplanned settlements, which was not the case, say, 2 to 3 decades ago in Karachi. The low-income groups now find the options in new squatter settlements along invisible locations. Often these locations do become visible and face the wrath of the government in the form of evictions. They try to densify and in fact utilize available housing by overcrowding them and using them to the utmost capacity that is available to them. And they now exist at city margins and peripheries where the work trips become a huge challenge for them to manage. Riverbanks, edges of railway tracks, banks of natural remains, amenity plots, all of them happen to be the common sites. So one asks the questions, why squatters? It's simply because of the fact that the options for housing for the low income and the urban poor are simply non-existing. So in that situation where this particular need is not fulfilled, squatters and overcrowding of existing housing stock becomes the answer. And the formal land supply mechanisms do not necessarily address this challenge. When this housing was somehow provided in the form of land supply schemes, the housing schemes, or the so-called housing for low-income groups, became the grounds for continuous speculation. The middle income or the investors would move in, and the actual urban poor were elbowed out. The limited understanding of sociology and economics of urban poor is also a case in point. The poor do not have savings and obviously very limited capital to rely upon. So obviously, the type of timelines and regulatory compliance we expect from them does not come forward. City plans are often made in large cities, including Karachi, but they remain largely ineffective because the plans simply remain academic exercises and not provided with the legal cover that they require to make them compliable instruments. Officialdom in the cities often view Kachi Abadis as safe havens for criminals. This is like a sociological aberration. And for that particular perception, the type of support and understanding these low-income settlements require that does not come forward. Evictions are now a commonplace entity in Karachi and like in other cities of Pakistan also. But evictions further aggravate the problems because every eviction generates more homelessness, and in some cases, the overall recourse to law creates more complexities both for the administration as well as for the low-income people themselves. So in
Noman
my
Sahab,
view, some of the possibilities for way forward is to reconsider and review some of the best practices that we have in housing across the country and study them for implementation and incorporation in the housing policy. The National Housing Policy of 2001 had a mention of incremental housing scheme, but not much work was done beyond that. We also need to consider the mechanisms for targeted land delivery, because that has delivered in many contexts where it was effectively undertaken. And land market studies must be undertaken to inform us about the ways and means through which a transparent mechanism of land supply could be undertaken, through which people of all strata of the society tend to benefit. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
thank you very much, sir. That was really thought-provoking. So we'll be moving towards the Punjab side, and though our apologies that by now our panelists will start, sounding more like a mannerist. That's why deliberately we put a couple of female voices also in our panel. One, we actually asked Dr. Fariha, and from Punjab side, we have actually arranged Miss Laila. But unfortunately, they got both certain family emergencies, and they are not with us. So from Punjab side, we have requested Nadir Ali Shah Saab, and he's an experienced urban planner with over 18 years in the field. He's currently working as a senior urban planner at the PMU local government department, where he oversees planning and policy initiative under the Punjab land use and zoning projects, providing technical oversight, guiding district level master planning across the province. His background also includes extensive consultancy experience in urban regional planning across Pakistan. So, Nadir Saab, as we understand that we requested you just in the last moment, so you might not be having PowerPoint, but let's convert our talk in a more candid way and make it as a conversation. So, a couple of questions from our side. The once you have seen the national housing policy, how Punjab is taking care of that, just like Sindh, what are the limitations of Punjab? What are the positive things Punjab has, and how you think that Punjab province will be able to leverage the federal national policy? So over to you, Nadir Saab. So Nadir Saab, you need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, loud and clear. So maybe
Thank
you
you
can
so
take a
much, sir.
couple of minutes to actually start giving us a Punjab perspective on national housing policy.
Thank you so much. मेरे ख्याल में जितने भी स्पीकर्स अभी तक आए और उन्होंने जो भी बात की तो बड़ी तफसील से दोनों एस्पेक्ट्स पॉजिटिव एंड फर्दर इंप्रूवमेंट इन द नेशनल हाउसिंग पॉलिसी उनके ऊपर बात हुई। मैं सिर्फ जो ओवरऑल एक क्योंकि हमने 37 डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स के अंदर जो है वो प्लान्स बनाए हैं लास्ट 3 इयर्स में, और उसमें जो गैप फील हुआ एज फॉर एज जहां पर हमें लगता है कि हाउसिंग पॉलिसी के अंदर मजीद कुछ ऐसी चीजें करने की जरूरत है या वो थी लेकिन उस तरह से इंटीग्रेटेड नहीं थी। तो 3 मेजर स्ट्रक्चरल गैप्स हैं जो कि मैं हाईलाइट करूंगा। एक है डिस्कनेक्शन बिटवीन द हाउसिंग सप्लाई एंड लैंड यूज प्लान्स। अभी नोमान साहब ने कहा कि प्लान्स बनते हैं लेकिन वो शायद उतने इफेक्टिव या इम्प्लीमेंटेबल नहीं होते या उनके ऊपर इस तरह की कोई इंस्टीट्यूशनल अरेंजमेंट नहीं है कि उनको जो है ना पाबंद किया जा सके कि किसी भी तरह से प्लान्स को अवॉइड ना किया जाए। हाउसिंग इज बिल्ट वेयर द इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर कांट रीच, ये एक दूसरा बड़ा गैप है। मींस हमारे पास अगर देखा जाए तो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर अवेलेबल है इन द पेरिफेरी ऑफ द सिटी या मेन कोर में, लेकिन हम हाउसिंग को वहां पर ले जाते हैं जहां पर मींस नहीं लेके जाना चाहिए। दूसरा है वीक इंस्टीट्यूशनल कोऑर्डिनेशन, approval and allocation, land allocation and financing are soiled, leading to the delays and duplication. फाइनेंसेस की भी जहां तक बात की गई पॉलिसी में कि हमारे पास शॉर्टेज है, बाजों का 3 से 5 साल तक की फाइनेंसिंग होती है, लेकिन ये चीजें जरूरी हैं कि जनाब इसके ऊपर मजीद बात की जाए और अपने इंस्टीट्यूशनल कोऑर्डिनेशन को मजीद स्ट्रॉन्ग किया जाए. तीसरा जो मेजर स्ट्रक्चरल गैप है, दैट इज द लेक ऑफ अफोर्डेबल लैंड सप्लाई मैकेनिज्म फॉर लोअर इनकम हाउस होल्ड, स्पेशली इन द एरियाज वेयर द, अगर मैं पंजाब के पर्सपेक्टिव में बात करूं तो अभी अगर हमने 37 डिस्ट्रिक्ट में नेक्स्ट 20 ईयर ग्रोथ प्लान बनाया है और एक अर्बन ग्रोथ बाउंड्री लगाई है कि नेक्स्ट 20 ईयर में आपकी इतनी पॉपुलेशन इस एरिया के अंदर सेटल होगी, एक्चुअली वो लैंड काफी महंगी है या उस लैंड के अंदर अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग विद रिस्पेक्ट टू मींस, जब तक मॉनेटरी टर्म्स में हम बात करें तो इट विल बी क्वाइट डिफिकल्ट. तो उसको कैसे मैनेज किया जाए. सो लर्निंग फ्रॉम द कंट्रीज लाइक ब्राजील, इंडिया या साउथ अफ्रीका मींस, वहां पर उन्होंने स्ट्रांग हाउसिंग पॉलिसीज बनाई हैं जिससे हम जो है ना अपनी चीजों को अलाइन कर सकते हैं. तो मेरे ख्याल में पंजाब के पर्सपेक्टिव में मजीद जो अगर मैं देखूं तो हमें अपने इनफॉर्मल सेटलमेंट्स को, क्योंकि बहुत ज्यादा हैं, हमारे पास कोई लैंड डेटा बैंक नहीं है, मींस इस तरह से हमारे पास कोई डिटेल डेटा बेस नहीं है. हाउसिंग को भी डिफाइन करना पड़ेगा, मींस डॉक्टर नासिर जावेद साहब ने बड़ी अच्छी बात की कि हमें अपने चीजों को थोड़ा सा रिविजिट करने की जरूरत है. हमें ये देखने की जरूरत है कि जनाब हाउसिंग है क्या, मींस क्या हम रेंटल हाउसिंग को मानते ही नहीं है सिरे से, क्या हम, क्योंकि अगर अगर ये चीज ना हो, एक बंदा है वो अफोर्ड कर सकता है, ही इज नॉट विलिंग इवन टू बाय अ हाउस, तो मींस उस पर्सपेक्टिव में क्या मींस वो भी उस गैप के अंदर इंक्लूड होता है. 9 मिलियन इज अ बिग फिगर, मींस इसमें कोई शक नहीं है. 50 to 60 मिलियन पॉपुलेशन फिर कहाँ रह रही है. इनफॉर्मल सेटलमेंट्स हमारे पास मौजूद हैं, मींस पंजाब में तो बहुत ज्यादा है, साउथ के एरियाज में अगर हम कच्चा पक्का या सेमी पक्का घर, जैसे कि खुर्रम फरीद साहब ने बात की, अगर वो भी हमारे इसी गैप में आते हैं 9 बिलियन में, तो फिर तो ये बहुत अलार्मिंग है. क्योंकि नॉर्मली अगर एक बिल्ड हाउस की बात की जाए तो इट्स बीन 50 ईयर्स फॉर अ पक्का हाउस. तो अगर देखा जाए पार्टीशन के बाद कितने घर हैं जो कि दोबारा इस गैप में आते हैं. हमारे पास कोई प्रॉपर डेटाबेस मौजूद ही नहीं है, डिजिटल डेटाबेस कोई ऐसा मौजूद ही नहीं है, कोई पार्सल लेवल का डेटा मौजूद नहीं है. पंजाब में भी अभी हमने एक कोशिश जरूर की है, लेकिन वहां पर भी हमारे पास ब्लॉक लेवल का डेटा है. हमारे पास उस तरह का पार्सल लेवल का डेटा मौजूद नहीं है जिसमें हम जो है ना एग्जैक्टली ये डिटरमिन कर सकें कि हमारे पास कितना गैप है. तो बाकी डॉक्टर नोमान साहब ने बड़ी अच्छी बात की कि हमारे पास एक्सपीरियंसेस मौजूद हैं, मींस मेरे ख्याल में वेल्थ ऑफ एक्सपीरियंस है, हमें उन चीज़ों से फ़ायदा उठाना चाहिए. मींस हमारे पास खुदा की बस्ती जैसे इनिशिएटिव्स थे, इंक्रीमेंटल हाउसिंग की चीज़ों को हम देख सकते हैं. सो ये वो चीज़ें हैं जो कि एक्चुअली हमें लेट करती है टू दोस्त के जनाब हमारे पास उन लोगों के लिए जो कि फॉर एग्जांपल अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकते. डॉक्टर नासिर जावेद साहब ने बड़ी अच्छी बात की कि जनाब जो अल्ट्रा रिच है उनके लिए तो जनाब विद इन 15 मिनट्स जो है वो अवेलेबल हो सकती है एक हाउसिंग की फैसिलिटी, लेकिन व्हाट अबाउट द पुअर्स, मीन जो अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकते. सो अफोर्डेबिलिटी इस वक्त एक बहुत बड़ा इशू है. बाकी पॉलिसी के अंदर ऑलमोस्ट सारी चीजें कवर है, इट्स वेरी ब्रॉड एंड इसके अंदर तमाम चीजें इंटीग्रेटेड हैं, मींस उसकी तमाम एस्पेक्ट्स को वो कवर करता है. काफी ज्यादा पॉलिसी मेयर्स हैं एंड दे आर गुड, लेकिन हमें इन चीजों को थोड़ा सा क्वांटिफाइबल टर्म्स में लेके जाना चाहिए.
Nadir
मेरे
Saab,
ख्याल
एक
में
मेरा
चूंकि
last, yeah, if you can take a
जी जी
last question and respond in a minute to couple. That good point is taken coming from Punjab, but I think your PMIU, led by Mr. Mirela and you yourself, is doing an incredible job in bringing the district land use plan. So how you think that coming up with that kind of land use plan is going to solve our urban sprawl and actually giving us access to the key urban land for housing development? So how you see it as a solution for what are the problems that have been actually laid out by so many panelists before?
The most housing challenges are actually the land use problems in disguise. Means हमारे पास चीजें हैं रिबन डेवलपमेंट की फॉर्म में हैं, इलीगल सब डिविजन्स हैं या फिर स्पेशल डिसिप्लिन्स में कोई इस तरह की चीजें हैं, तो कोई भी सब्सिडी मॉडल जो है वो वर्क नहीं करती। और बाकी जहां तक बात है मींस जो जहां तक आपका सवाल है, तो अगर हम कोई एक नेशनल जियो एआई बेस्ड हाउसिंग एंड लैंड इंफॉर्मेशन सिस्टम बना सकें, जिस तरह के इंडिया में है, उन्होंने एक जीआईएस एनेबल्ड स्लम मैपिंग और हाउसिंग डैशबोर्ड बनाया हुआ है विच कैन ट्रांसफॉर्म्स हाउ वी प्लान एंड ट्रैक द हाउसिंग एट द तहसील लेवल इवन. So without reliable real-time data, housing delivery will always be a hit miss, in my opinion.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nadir Saab, for your incredible insight. So before I move to the Balochistan, now let me share one of the things because it somehow that connects with our program also, and might be many of the participants will be still surprised that why Punjab Affordable Housing Program is hosting that kind of thing. So we honestly saw a gap because the national housing policy was developed by the federal government, and we wanted to actually lead in a way that somehow that the provinces can get connected with that. So we got an incredible team, and that's why we are able to bring all of you together, the panel of the makers of the policy and the reviewers of the policy. So first of all, I'm extremely thankful to my team of doing a lot of coordination behind. Then we got a lot of, informal channels also. I'll be especially thankful to our informal group called Housing Guru, and many of the experts actually volunteered, and that's why we are able to present that. And moving from national housing policy, just a document, and building upon the provincial perspective of developing our province's specific policies to the program like us. So we are the guys who are actually taking these things from the pages to the plots and the development of housing. So that's why all these things start connected with each other. We are a World Bank funded program, $250 million. By June 27, we are targeting a 3-dimensional reforms agenda, bringing a lot of changes in the legal regime, changing the planning standard, coming up with public-private partnership, changing affordable private housing scheme rules, somehow the other, how we can bring the housing societies also, and push the agenda towards the affordable housing, and then leveraging state land for development of the housing. And then, as number of the panelists has already indicated, development of such kind of system where we can bring the data to the academia, to the industry. So it's a holistic project, taking from the words to the action. So from here onward, now I'll be moving towards the Balochistan, and we are extremely happy that Dr. 𝐋𝒐𝙀 Mahar is joining us. Dr. 𝐋𝒐𝙀 Mahar is an architect and urbanist, currently serving as a professor at NHP, Islamabad. He research primarily focuses on sustainable architecture and urbanism, housing, human government, indoor environment quality, building defense and rework, as well as energy efficient building. Dr. Mahar has a diverse professional background, having worked as a registered architect in Pakistan, a housing manager in Malaysia, and an academic and research in Pakistan, Malaysia, and Belgium. And why we have actually entrusted him the responsibility of sharing with the Balochistan perspective, because he has served in Butmis, Balochistan University. He has stayed over there, and Balochistan has a peculiar geographical challenges, as well as housing development, a different perspective from Punjab or Sindh. So over to Mahar Sahab, and you got the 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Imran sir. Can I share my screen, or if you can allow me? So is it
Yes,
visible now?
Yeah, we can see your screen also, and you're loud and clear. Dr. Saab,
And the slides are moving?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Imran Sahab, and thank you, Punjab Affordable Housing Program, for organizing this webinar. So my seniors have already talked about the housing policy. I will specifically focus on the Balochistan perspective. And thanks for also introducing me. I have worked in Butins for 11 years. In fact, I also did my PhD thesis on Quetta. So we all know that housing is a fundamental human need. We agree on it. I'm going to bring a perspective of a poet on this. दरबदर की ठोकरें खाई तो ये मालूम हुआ, दरबदर की ठोकरें खाई तो ये मालूम हुआ, घर किससे कहते हैं, क्या चीज है बेघर होना. Another one says, फिर जो इस शहर में आना हो तो मिलना मुझसे, फिर जो इस शहर में आना हो तो मिलना मुझसे, घर का आसान पता है ये है कि घर है ही नहीं. Moving on, some of the aspects are already covered in the National Housing Policy 2025. Considering the Balochistan, for example, there are hazards, the disasters, the climate change, and then also the droughts, climate resilience. Maybe there's also discussion about the extreme heat issues, but I think also we have to add on something extreme cold issues as well, because some of the regions or cities are very cold, considering Ziyarat, maybe Quetta for a few months, and Kalat. Also, the housing policy focuses on the marginalized group, but if we see Balochistan, there are some indigenous communities, Hazaras, there are Zikris in Makran division, and maybe when Balochistan government has to formalize a housing policy for the province, they have to consider these marginalized or indigenous communities as well. Also, if the housing policy may also focus on the women-headed household and internally displaced people. So there are people who are internally displaced due to different reasons. I will also cover this later on. Housing finance is an issue also, like in other part of Pakistan. It is also a pertinent issue in Balochistan. Then the land titles and the legal issues in Balochistan are quite complicated when specifically there is no digitization of the land record, and then the land is more like they have the informal system for the land. Some of the land belongs to the tribes or the tribals, and maybe the tenancy is not very secure in some of the areas. And these are the issues to be addressed. One is the indigenous materials. We have already mentioned this in the housing policy. Another one is the cultural architecture, which is the indigenous architecture. This is also mentioned in the housing policy. Lifestyle or the pattern, this is a bit ignored, and then we have to specifically discuss it in the Balochistan specific guidelines. Need for the context specific solution. So there are different contexts in Balochistan focusing on the social issues, the culture, the geography, the climate, and so on, because the province is very big and then it has diverse climate from the north to south, from east to west. Then there's a shortage of construction workers, and we have faced this in several events, including the earthquakes in 2008, 2013, and the Harnai earthquake in 2021. That the construction workers, there is a lack of this. The lack of technical institutions when it comes to the housing experts, including the engineers, the planners, architects, specifically the planners. I actually have a record from 2022. There were only 13 registered town planners from Balochistan, but not every one of them was working in Balochistan. Then the capacity building is also an issue. We have tried to address it in several times. And then the impact of housing development, how it is affecting overall situation, because the recent flooding in Balochistan, specifically in Quetta, it actually showed that some of the houses were very vulnerable to the disaster because the houses were constructed in the flood bed. So the housing policy has to be comprehensive and has to focus on the geographical challenges in Balochistan, also the cultural consideration, the legal framework issues. The community-based approach is very important in such a context. Also the support from the provincial framework, which is maybe lacking now, and the inclusivity of different stakeholders. The decentralized model can work actually because in Balochistan, in most of the cities and areas, the housing is in the clusters and it is very scattered. And then maybe we have to provide some specific solutions rather than connecting them to the national grid for energy. Maybe we have to use the solar energy, or maybe we have to use the wind energy to power the houses. And provision of the education and health facility is very much important to actually stop the migration from the small areas to the bigger cities or areas. The community-led planning and the tribal engagement is very important. And this has been much ignored in the Balochistan context, that the people are not really included in the decision making, and that's why the result is not really favorable considering the local situation and in terms of the economy and also in terms of the urban planning. Then the integration of the earthquake resistance. And now I have mentioned here earthquake, but also Balochistan is facing several disasters as well, including the flooding in some of the regions, maybe the droughts. So there we need the integrated approach for the disaster resilience. Then also we can use the solar energy or rainwater harvesting and maybe the biogas for the fuel for cooking. And in some of the projects in Balochistan, like in IDSP in Quetta, we are already using few of them. Then we can actually mobilize the training for the skill development of the construction workers. And then we can teach them the affordable solutions, the earthquake resistant techniques. This has been done a lot of time by different organizations, including the NED University under the supervision of Dr. Noman. Then the innovative housing solutions. So public-private partnership is very important, and Balochistan is really lacking it. Currently, they are focusing on this. The CSR-related projects we have seen after the flooding in 2022. Some of the CSR-related projects have been very helpful. Also, the local infrastructure development. So the province is very huge, and then maybe the infrastructure challenges need to be addressed differently considering the other provinces. Sustainable housing is one of the key factor. Then the economic growth perspective has to be considered, and what is the social impact of the housing on the overall situation. These are the focus areas for Balochistan, which I have recommended. One is the decentralized cluster-based housing and urban slums has to be focused. Then the community-led planning and the tribal engagement, the climate change and water scarcity, the disaster resilience and the traditional housing, the digitization of housing and land record and housing finance, the transit-oriented mini towns and skill development of the people. Safety, security, and internal migration is one of the huge issue in the Balochistan because of the security considerations. Also, there is a nomadic population in Balochistan and seasonal migrants. So when it is very hot in a city like Sibi, they move to Quetta, and when it is very cold in some of the regions, they move to the warmer cities. Also, we have to focus on the emergency shelters considering the different disasters in Balochistan. So I will end my presentation with this टूटे हुए दिलों से न उल्फत की बात छेड़ टूटे हुए दिलों से न उल्फत की बात छेड़ जिक्र मकान अच्छा नहीं किसी बेघर के सामने. Thank you.
Wow. So thank you very much, Waqas Saab. I think that putting the Balochistan case so forcefully, so poetically, and there would not have been better person than you bringing the Balochistan on the forefront of the screen. So moving ahead, again that since morning we got a bit of hiccups in arranging the panelists. So from KPK, Imran Wazir Saab was supposed to join us, but he again got a family emergency. He couldn't be with us. But we are thankful to him that from KPK, Yaqoob Khan Saab will be voicing KPK perspective. Yaqoob Saab, if you can take a 30-40 seconds to introduce yourself also, and then take a 7 to 8 minutes of coming up with a KP perspective on national housing policy. So Yaqoob Saab, over to you, please.
Thank you, Imran Saab. मेरी आवाज आ रही है, sir?
Exactly, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for providing me such an opportunity to present KP perspective. सर मैं बेसिकली अर्बन प्लानर हूँ और जितने भी पार्टिसिपेंट हैं वो सारे मेरे कुछ सीनियर्स हैं, कुछ क्लास फेलोज हैं, तो हैप्पी टू सी हिम देयर. और सर ये मैं अपनी जो स्पीच है, जो पॉलिसीज वगैरह तो हमेशा बनती हैं, लेकिन उनका जो असली इश्यूज आता है वो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन में आता है. तो मैं यहाँ पे अपने जो स्पीच है या जो डिबेट है उसको मैं 2 पार्ट्स में डिवाइड कर लेता हूँ. एक्चुअली जो प्रैक्टिकली हमने लो कास्ट के लिए जो KPK में जो कुछ किया है वो एक्सपीरियंस शेयर कर लूँगा, जो हमें प्रॉब्लम्स आई है वो कर लूँगा, और दूसरा जो मेरा वो होगा वो जो सजेशन है और जो कुछ हम फेस कर रहे हैं ताकि वो पॉलिसी में वो चीज़ें कैटर हो, सो दैट वो जो हमें प्रॉब्लम्स आ रही है ताकि वो हम फेस ना कर सकें. فرسٹلی اب سر ہم نے آلریڈی جو یہ ہمیں ایک کریڈٹ اور پرائڈ کی بات ہے کہ جو نیپڈا فلیٹس ہم نے 116 جو لو کاسٹ کے لیے وہ ڈیلیور کیے تھے، جو 221 میں دین پرائم منسٹر نے ایک اسکیم لانچ کی تھی، تو وہ ایکچولی وی ہیو ڈیلیور دیٹ، اور اس کے جو چیدہ کچھ کرائٹیریا ہیں اور وہ چیزیں ہیں وہ میں پارٹیسپینٹ کے نالج میں لے کے آ رہا ہوں کہ وہ ہم نے ایکچولی کیا تھا، تاکہ وہ ایکسپیرینس بیس چیز ہو. جو ایکچولی جو ہاؤسنگ پالیسی کا جو بیسک مقصد ہے پرووائڈ شیلٹر ٹو شیلٹر لیس ہے اینڈ ہاؤسنگ فار آل ہے، تو وہ جو مقصد ہے اس کا بیسک وہ ہم نے جو اس میں تھوڑا سا کام کیا ہوا ہے اور اس کو ہم نے اچیو کیا ہے. اس کے میں تھوڑی سی چیزیں اور جو چیلنجز ہیں ہمیں فیس ہوئی ہے وہ تھوڑا سا ایکسپلین کر لوں. اس میں یہ ہمیں ایک پروجیکٹ ملا تھا کہ آپ نے جو لو کاسٹ ہاؤسنگ ہے اس میں آپ نے یہ افورڈیبل ہاؤس پرووائڈ کرنے ہیں. اس میں ہم نے یہ پروجیکٹ لانچ کیا تھا 221 میں، اور اس کے لیے ہمارا وہ ایم او یو ہوا تھا نیپڈا کے ساتھ، نیا پاکستان ہاؤسنگ اینڈ ڈیولپمنٹ اتھارٹی کے ساتھ. اس کے اندر یہ ہم نے پروجیکٹ سٹارٹ کیا تھا. جو اس کے ایلیجیبلٹی کرائٹیریا تھی، اس کا جو موڈ آف فائنینسز تھا، جس میں ادھر بھی ایک تھیم ہے ٹو فائنینسز کا، تو اس میں سے آلریڈی جو کرائٹیریا تھا جو 50,000 کا جو انکم لوگ ہیں وہ اس کے لیے ایلیجیبل تھے. اس میں پھر یہ نیکٹا اور نیپڈا اور یہ جو نادرا سے اس کی ویریفیکیشن تھی جو بہت ٹف ویریفیکیشن تھی، اور ایک اس حساب سے انہوں نے ہمیں کوئی 116 جو پرسن تھے وہ آئیڈینٹیفائی کیے تھے کہ یہ دے آر موسٹ ایلیجیبل پرسن فار دا اسکیم. وہ ہم نے سر اس طرح تھا کہ اس میں سے 3 لاکھ سبسڈی فیڈرل نے ہمیں پرووائڈ کی تھی، اور اس میں سے 2.5 لاکھ جو تھا اس نے ایڈوانس پیمنٹ کرنا تھا اس بندے نے جو اپلیکینٹ تھا. وہ پروجیکٹ جب ہم نے سٹارٹ کیا تھا تو وہ یہ ٹارگٹ ملا تھا کہ آپ نے 18 منتھس میں 25 لاکھ میں ایک فلیٹ یا گھر ان کو ڈیلیور کرنا ہے. جو ہی سر وہ پاکستان کی حالت آپ کو پتہ ہی ہے، یہ ایسکیلیشن اور اس کی وجہ سے یہ پھر پروجیکٹ جو تھا یہ 25 سے 29 لاکھ تک پہنچ گیا پر فلیٹ. تو اس کے لیے پھر کافی مسئلے مسائل تھے. وہ ظاہر ہے وہ پھر ہم نے جو کے پی سے ریکویسٹ کی، اور وہ 4 لاکھ جو ہے پھر کے پی گورنمنٹ نے وہ اس میں ہمیں وہ سبسیڈائز دیا. تو الحمدللہ وہ ہم نے 18 منتھس کے ٹائم میں یہ پروجیکٹ ہم نے ڈیلیور کر دیا، اور اس کی انیگوریشن وغیرہ ہو گئے، اور یہ پریکٹیکلی اب لوگ اس میں وہ اکاموڈیشن اور کالونائزیشن سٹارٹ ہو گئی. تو یہ ہماری ایک سکسیس سٹوری تھی. دوسرا جو ہم نے سر یہ ابھی ایک ریسنٹلی یہ پروجیکٹ احساس اپنا گھر ہاؤسنگ اسکیم ہم نے سٹارٹ کیا ہے سر. اس کی میں آپ کو یہ جو کے پی گورنمنٹ کے انیشیٹو ہے، اور اس کے تھوڑے سے میں اس کے وہ بیسک مقصد تو یہی ہے کہ جو ہاؤسنگ ڈیمانڈ سپلائی گیپ ہے اس کو کم کرنا ہے، اور جو ہاؤسنگ پالیسی بن رہی ہے اس کا مقصد یہی ہے کہ یہ جو افورڈیبل ہاؤس پرووائڈ کرنے. تو اس کے لیے سر دوسرا جو ہمارا احساس اپنا گھر اسکیم ہم نے سٹارٹ کیا سر، اس میں بھی سر یہ جو ہمارا ایم او یو ہو ہے بینک آف خیبر کے ساتھ، اور گورنمنٹ نے اس کو 4 بلین دینے ہیں جو کہ ٹرنچز میں دینے ہیں، اور اس میں سے 200 ملین ایچ ٹرنچ دینا ہے سر. تو یہ پروجیکٹ سر ہم نے ابھی سٹارٹ کیا ہوا ہے سر، اور وہ ابھی اس کا جو پرپس تھا یا جو اپنا گھر تھا اس کا یہی تھا کہ کنسٹرکشن آف نیو ہاؤسز آن اون لینڈ کرنا تھا سر. اس میں ہم نے یہ کیا تھا کہ کسی کا اگر کسی نے گھر مکان بنانا ہے تو وہ بھی بنا سکتے ہیں. اس میں اگر کسی نے اپنے گھر میں جس طرح انکریمنٹل ہاؤسز کی بات ہو رہی ہے اس میں بھی وہ کر سکتے ہیں، اور اس کا جو میکسیمم لون دینا ہے اس میں 1.5 ملین وہ پر اپلیکینٹ دینا ہے، اور اس کی جو پے بیک ہے وہ 7 ایئرز ہے سر. دوسرا سر یہ تو ہمارے جو اپنی سکسیس سٹوری تھی یا جو ہم کر رہے ہیں اس پہ تھا. دوسرے سر میں جو اس پہ آؤں گا، یہ جو ہاؤسنگ پالیسی ہے تو اس کے کچھ جو سجیشنز ہیں جو اس میں جو ہمیں پریکٹیکلی جو مسئلے آ رہے ہیں، تاکہ وہ یا جو ہم سجیسٹ کر رہے ہیں کہ ہم اگر یہ چیزیں اس میں ڈال لیں تو یہ ہو سکتا ہے کہ ہم جو ہمارا جو ٹارگٹ ہے یا جو مقصد ہے پالیسی کا وہ ہم ایزیلی اچیو کر سکتے ہیں. اس میں سر یہ چونکہ اس کا جو ہمارے PHA کا جو سلوگن ہے ہاؤسنگ فار آل، اور جو ہاؤسنگ پالیسی ہے اس میں بھی ہاؤسنگ فار آل سلوگن ہے. تو مقصد یہی ہے کہ اس میں کچھ چیزیں انہوں نے دی ہے. اگر ہاؤسنگ ہم نے گورنمنٹ نے یا پرائیویٹ کرنے، اس میں جو سٹیپس ہیں وہ ادھر بھی ڈیفائن ہے. پہلے تو اس میں لینڈ ایکوزیشن آتا ہے. اگر لینڈ ایکوزیشن پروسیس جو ہے وہ سمپل یا سمپلیفائڈ نہیں ہوگا تو یہ ٹارگٹ جو ہے ہمیں فرسٹ جو ہرڈل آئے گا وہ لینڈ ایکوزیشن میں آئے گا. آلریڈی ان پالیسی میں انہوں نے جو پروپوزل دی ہے کہ ہم لینڈ کو ایکوائر کریں گے مارکیٹ ریٹ پہ انڈر لینڈ ایکوزیشن 1894. تو میں نہیں سمجھتا کہ یہ بیسٹ سولوشن ہے، لیکن اس کے لیے ہمیں پھر بیک میں تو جانا ہوگا. جو 1894 کے جو لینڈ ایکوزیشن ایکٹ ہے ادھر چینجز کرنی پڑے گی. اگر اس میں مجھے نہیں لگتا کہ کوئی اس طرح پروویژن ہے جو آپ اس کو اچیو کر سکتے ہیں یا اس کو لینڈ کو ایکوائر سکتے ہیں. تو اس کے لیے ڈیفینیٹلی ہمیں لینڈ ایکوزیشن اس میں جانا ہوگا. دوسرا، جس طرح بلوچستان میں ڈاکٹر صاحب نے کہا کہ یار پبلک پرائیویٹ پارٹنرشپ تو اس میں جو مشن سٹیٹمنٹ میں اور ایک جگہ پہ اور نیشنل ہاؤسنگ پالیسی میں مینشن ہے کہ پبلک پرائیویٹ پارٹنرشپ. لیکن پبلک پرائیویٹ پارٹنرشپ کے لیے کچھ میکینزم تو ہونا چاہیے، کچھ اس کو اوپن نہیں چھوڑنا چاہیے. اس میں میرے خیال میں کچھ ہمیں جس طرح اٹس ون آف کائنڈ آف لینڈ شیئرنگ از PP، جس طرح CDA کر رہے ہیں یا DHA جس طرح وہ پرائیویٹ ہاؤسنگ وہ کر رہے ہیں، تو وہ ہمیں اس طرح کچھ ماڈلز یا اس میں رکھنے چاہیے سو دیٹ ہم وہ جو فرسٹ سٹیپ ہیں تاکہ وہ اپنے گول کو اچیو کرنے کے لیے جو وہ تو آسان ہو جائے نا. تو اس کے لیے یہ ہمیں کچھ چیزیں چاہیے ہوں گی تاکہ ہم اس کو ایک میکینزم دیں، ایک ماڈلز دیں کہ یہ ماڈلز ہیں اور آپ اس پہ کام کریں. کیونکہ اب اگر آپ ایگوزیشن نیگوسیشن سے بھی کرتے یا مارکیٹ سے کم ریٹ پہ بھی لیتے تو ہماری کافی ایجنسی ہوتی ہے جو وہ تب بھی نہیں مانتی کہ یہ آپ نے ایک فیئر کیا ہے. وہ ظاہر ہے وہ کافی چیزیں آتی ہیں. تو یہ تاکہ وہ بھی ایک سیکیورٹی بنا ہے اور ایک ٹرانسپیرنٹ ایکوزیشن وہ ہو جائے سر. باقی ہاؤسنگ فائنینس میں انہوں نے ایک آلریڈی مینشن کیا کہ ایک ریگولیٹری اتھارٹی ریرا کے نام سے ہے، ریئل اسٹیٹ اینڈ ریگولیٹری اتھارٹی. انہوں نے تو اس میں ساری یہ چیزیں کور کی ہے کہ یار اس میں وہ رینٹ بھی وہ رینٹ کا بھی کریں گے، وہ جو ایجنٹس ہیں ان کو بھی ڈیل کریں گے، جو ڈیولپرز ہیں ان کے ساتھ بھی یہ کریں گے.
Yaqoob صاحب, your request will be in a minute if you can conclude now, please.
اچھا سر اس میں یہ تھا کہ ہم لائک اگر یہ ریرا سے ہم یہ کام کیوں نہ لیں. اگر ہم جو جس طرح 23% ہمارے جو ڈیولپ ایریا میں رینٹڈ جو ہاؤسز ہے وہ رینٹ پہ دیتے ہیں نا، جو رینٹڈ ہے، تو وائی نہ ہم یہ ریرا سے یہی بھی لے لیں. جس طرح لائک آسٹریلیا میں یہ ایک کنسیپٹ ہے کہ جو آپ رینٹ پہ دیتے ہیں وہ ان سے آپ ایک سیکیورٹی یا ایڈوانس پیمنٹ لیتے 3 months 4 months. اس کے لیے ایک سینٹرل اکاؤنٹ بنایا جائے اور اس کو انویسٹ کر کے ہم اسی لوگوں کی سبسیڈائز کریں، اسی کو انویسٹ کر لیں. یہی سیم پیٹرن آسٹریلیا وغیرہ میں چل رہا ہے. سو دیٹ وی کین اس کو بھی کر سکتے لوگوں کو فیسیلیٹ کر سکتے. تھینک یو سر. باتیں تو اور بھی ہیں لیکن یہ ٹائم کی وجہ سے. تھینک یو سر. تھینک یو فار یور پیشنس.
Thank you very much. So Yaqoob sir, just to take you on board that Punjab and particularly our program, we are devising our own public-private partnership rules and regulation to encourage affordable housing. And then we are the agency who's leading the development and enactment of RERA Act for Punjab also. So we'll be sharing our draft rules, regulation law, maybe the KPK and other provinces also can help us out and you can also learn from our thing. So moving ahead to our next and final panelists in reviewing and taking Waseem Saab also on board, that as it is said that if you want to go faster, go alone. But if you want to go farther, go together. So that was the perspective, that bringing all the provinces and provincial government and federal government together. But we will be missing an important element if we don't bring the perspective of our architecture and planning firm, that how that being slightly outside of the government, they see and review the thing. And for that, Mohammed Shoiab Saab is with us. He's a distinguished urban planner, project strategist, with over 20 years of international experience in smart cities, urban regeneration, affordable housing, infrastructure planning, and policy reform. He has successfully led transformative assignment across public and private sector, advancing inclusive growth through data-driven strategies and institution innovation. Over to Shoaib Saab, that how you see and private sector, the national planning, national housing policy 25 coming out. Over to you, sir.
Yeah,
And you got 8 to 10 minutes, sir.
yeah, thank you. Thank you, Imran, for inviting on this very important aspect. So today I will be presenting a critical implementation focused perspective on the national housing policy, specifically from the lens of architecture and planning and engineering and construction firms in Pakistan. So kindly go to the next slide. The policy deserves credit for acknowledging the housing crisis and promoting affordable, compact, and sustainable housing, which is mentioned at various places in the document. However, it falls short of strategic clarity. The vision and the goal are repetitive, offering no operational direction. Strategic clarity would mean a long-term vision broken down into measurable goals, clear objectives, and implementable strategies. Secondly, affordability is vaguely defined, as Dr. Nasir also pondered on this aspect as well. There is no price cap, for example, income segmentation or affordability index mentioned in the document. The most concerning gap, A&P and E&C firms are not even identified as stakeholders, despite being the professionals expected to actually plan, design, and deliver the housing stock. There is no mechanism mentioned to involve them in slum upgrading or other, for example, vertical development, even where the policy calls for these interventions. Can you, next slide, please? So one of the most fundamental flaws in the policy, which as per my perspective, is the absence of a time horizon. This is not mentioned. Is this policy valid for 5 years or 10 years? So we should cap this. There are no annual or regional delivery targets. For example, Dr. Mahar specifically said about Balochistan perspective that nothing is mentioned how many housing units will be delivered in Balochistan, Sindh, or even KP or Punjab. So it needs to be mentioned, and we should mention or put these targets in the policy. And no urban-rural breakdowns, no phasing. These are nothing mentioned about these. We can't manage what we don't measure. That is what Dr. Nasir also said. There is also no milestone-based monitoring framework. So a policy at this scale cannot succeed without measurable KPIs. So I would request that we should include these. Next slide, please. So what needs to change? Firstly, formally include A&P and E&C firms as project partners and not just contractors. This means engaging them in TOD, slum redevelopment and design of affordable housing schemes, and it should be specifically mentioned in the document as well. Developing a national registry or pre-qualification system for planning and construction firms to participate in public-private housing projects. Second, the policy must support design innovation through competition. For example, Punjab Affordable Housing Program, they did a wonderful competition that tried to standardize yet locally adoptable prototypes and low-cost designs. So this will help us to understand like various kind of topologies which we can introduce in various provinces and regions. Thirdly, the government must develop KPIs and a housing affordability index to measure cost to income ratios, rental burdens, and the quality of housing stock across income deciles and geographies. This will give us the performance dashboard we need to track delivery and course correct when needed. Next slide, please. In conclusion, I must say the National Housing Policy 25 cannot succeed without the structural inclusion of very professionals who will implement it. If A&P and E&C firms are not given defined role, incentivized participation, and access to housing delivery pipeline, the policy risks remaining on paper. This is not just about housing, it's about jobs, equity, sustainability, and other our national goals as well. We, the professionals, are ready to lead, but the policy must empower us with clear mandates, data access, and streamlined frameworks. Let's move beyond words to delivery. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shoaib Saab. You win the timekeeping award by, saving the time for us also because we are running late. Dear participants, at how in the morning we started off by Waseem Saab of setting the stage and bringing the makers of the policy perspective. Then Dr. Nasir is giving us national perspective. Then all the provinces actually run through their own perspective. And then we ended with Shoaib Saab bringing a very important ANP perspective also. So there would not have been any better person than Babar Khan Mumtaz, because अब बहस इतनी छिड़ गई है कि किसी को समेटना लाजमी है. And then he's the guy who will be actually putting the way forward also and giving us a certain concluding thing. Let me introduce Babar Saab. He's an urban planner and development economist with 40 years of experience in local development and housing. He's senior urban and housing policy advisor at UN Habitat Iraq, former HEC professor at NCA Lahore, and ex-director of DPU, University College London. But as Waqas Saab has ignited the poetic spirit in us, so I can't hold back the inner poet inside me. So एक शेर अर्ज है बाबर साहब के लिए, because right now he's sitting in England. So particularly for him, he seldom comes back to the country. So बाबर साहब आपके लिए, न तुम आए न अपनी याद को भेजा मेरे दिल में, ये वो घर है जिसको तुमने रखा है मक्खी बरसों. बाबर साहब, over to you.
Shukriya. Just on that personal note, I will be in Lahore in about 2 weeks' time, and I look forward to seeing you personally.
आप तो फौरन ही आ गए. Thank you very much, sir. Over to you.
अच्छा, thank you. Can I just skip the next 2 slides, because I think एक तो time भी कम हो रहा है, दूसरा ये कि इन चीजों पे काफी बात हो चुकी है. So next one, please. Next. हाँ, इस पे जरा मैं in a sense coming in at the end and before talking about the way forward, I think I am forced to in a way act as a summarizer or repeater of some of the things that have been said, but I think that they are worth saying. First of all, I think that this is a very good successor, if you like, to the 2001 housing policy, which over the years I have always said has been one of the best housing policies anywhere. That never was. The housing policy was never adopted. In fact, we are a country which specializes in that kind of thing. Every city in Pakistan has had at least 5 to 10 master plans. As far as I know, none of them have actually been adopted. So we can do things, but then we don't follow through with them. So I hope that this will not be the case with this. But also in the same way, we stray from the objective. This is a policy, but it often strays into strategies and even down to the project level. A policy should focus on the approach, the overall style, on the way and the why of housing, rather than of the what and when. That is a kind of follow-up. But that's a small criticism, and maybe being too academic about it. Now, there is a lot of expectations, in a sense, that have come out of this policy, but not enough on exactly how and from where and with what resources we are going to do this. That the income is too low. So it may be that what we are doing is, by supporting housing, we are enabling incomes to remain low. What we are actually doing is subsidizing the economy. So it's not that we are subsidizing housing, we're subsidizing the economy, because housing contributes about 3 times the value that's put into housing is returned by the economy. So every rupee that we spend on housing will generate 3 rupees in terms of demand or increased demand and employment and so on. So we need to put that sort of thing into the into this policy. The last thing that I want to sort of say in terms of an overall assessment is that, well, we started to change it a little bit just with this session, is that it's a top-down approach rather than incorporating bottom-up. We are assuming that with our tradition of trickle-down, which usually ends up by meaning trickle-down to my level, and stop it from going any further. Next slide, please. Next slide, can I? Anyway, so I just want to then summarize with a few gaps and misconceptions, and I think, and I really passionately believe in this, that unless we can get over our reluctance to face some of our own realities and understand our own realities, we're not going to get any further forward. And there are about 4 or 5 terms that I think are crucial. We've been hinting at them during this seminar also, or this discussion also. First of all is the distinction between rural and urban. I mean, it used to be that there was such a distinction. It used to be, in fact, that it was the rural that led to, created, and supported the urban. Now that situation has not only changed, it's not that urban supports the rural so much, but geography itself is now history. You can have a man sitting on a mountain, or a woman for that matter, and be as urban as you like, as a hermit used to be 100 years ago. So what is important now is not the location, but it's the connectivity. And we have seen this. We have seen this in our own settlements that have been developing, that where you have settlements alongside a road and they provide access, they are as much urban as anything within an urban settlement, or the urban areas as well. The other similar problems that we must overcome and agree to is that a Kachi Abadi is actually a land revenue distinction and not a physical description. It just means that the work of transforming and changing land use to settlements has not been formalized, and so it remains a Kachi Abadi. It's a failure of administration and planning, not of construction. Then another big word we keep using is slums, and relating that to Kachi Abadi. Please remember that slums is based on 5 criteria developed by UN Habitat as a global level. 3 of those are nothing to do with the house. There's not a housing thing, they're to do with availability of water, availability of sanitation, and so on. The only 2 that are to do with housing, one of them is overcrowding, and the other one is the construction materials. Now, my understanding of the slums that I've been looking at, a lot of the poor construction is as much due to the lack of security of tenure, particularly, and that means that a lot of people build houses with the walls still built out of bricks or blocks, but the roof is still sheets of held down by stones because they do not have the security to live. So I think we need to re-examine what we mean by slums and the sort of ridiculous figures quoted out of context from UN Habitat, that we should all definitely examine, but be accurate about them. And from that, I lead to my biggest concern, and I mention this often, is that the figure of 10 million housing shortage is a misquote between legal and illegal. It's not based on any survey. There's a presumption that only 20% of our housing has been approved, which is true, because rural housing is not subject to approval. So it doesn't need approval. So to say that they're not approved is immaterial. Similarly, to call a Kacha rural house as being poorly built is also not in tune with reality. Not all rural houses built out of mud are poorly constructed or inadequately constructed. So then let me go on. So I think, as I say, it would be good if we can help to clarify these things and change our conversations accordingly. But more importantly, why have we not been more successful at replicating OPP and indeed of Khuda Ki Basti? And that's something that we don't really hear enough about. It's sort of what are the reasons why there is only really one Khuda Ki Basti, although a number of other has been tried, including in Lahore and so on. Then we keep talking about housing finance when so few of our people actually use housing finance. What we need is finance for improving finance, for improving housing, or for improving or acquisition of land and improving tenure. Ironically, housing finance, as it is seen in the West and so on, and we seem to be importing, doesn't allow that to happen. Amazingly, housing finance, as according to the rules we play by, once you've got a loan, you can't get a second loan, which is absurd. That the only person who actually repays the loan isn't allowed to get another loan. So we need to change those kinds of things. We talk about high rise, and the policy talks about high rise, but I think it may or may not reduce urban sprawl, and it's an expensive process. I think we should start to look more at slow rise. Slow rise is cheaper, slow rise is more manageable, but more importantly, it helps build communities. So I would suggest that we include slow rise, a phenomena that at the moment is largely restricted to low and middle income housing, but one that I think should become part and parcel of our policies and so on. So let me just go to the next slide. If you can just put that forward. So now when I talk about, I was asked to talk about the way forward. A number of things have already been mentioned. And I think the most important thing for me is just the very fact that this seminar is being held and that it has attracted so many people to make contributions which are very valuable, and it shows the depth and extent of our interest in this field. Now, the government may or may not adopt this housing policy, and we should facilitate the critical assessment of our understanding. But what can we do? We have obviously that responsibility to respond, and many of us already have, so we can identify areas that need development, assessment, or confirmation, and so on. But what else can we do? We held this meeting in a kind of snap way, and I really admire Imran Saab and his colleagues that they've managed to put this thing together and organize it so well. But we need to have a series of perhaps regular, planned and prepared meetings so that we are able to get more into depth. We need to have the ability to have a longer term evidence-based assessments and presentations. We need to be able to generate new ideas with smaller and more focused but regular exchanges that permit us to get into the details. So this we need to do whether or not the housing policy is or is not adopted and so on. I think we owe it to ourselves. And particularly the other useful thing about this particular forum is that it is not sort of restricted or has to obey or respond to any of our, let's say, government or employer defined responsibilities. We are able to be open and free, and we are able to criticize and constructive. We are not obliged to follow or support a particular line. So I think it's a very valuable resource. I would like to take this that in the future we should go forward, perhaps by launching or enhancing, if one already sort of exists, a journal of housing practice. We need that. We need to get some feedback from practice. We need to talk about practice, not about theory or strategies alone. We need a wider engagement of professionals and institutions. And in particular, we need greater involvement of our academic and professional training institutions in housing. I see very, very few theses, for example, on housing and almost none on low-cost housing. When I look at what the departments of architecture are producing, they have a session or a series of lectures, but that's it. I think we need to create, perhaps at the graduate level, postgraduate level, but somewhere we need to have the engagement of our institutions. Going slightly further sort of forward, that in this day and age, I think it should be quite simple to create a housing knowledge bank. We need to be able to have a bank which sort of combines elements of academia.com, which tells us who's written what kind of paper, and also, like the sort of social groupings that we have. We need to combine that for Pakistan. We need to have an easy access or a resource which lists, I mean, even now looking for the question people kept asking is, can I get a copy of this the draft housing policy and so on. Somebody said, can I get a copy of 2001? We should have an easy access to a knowledge bank that keeps both the people, the professionals, as well as the data and the publications, so that we can build upon it and ease it. And as I said, this is all relatively simple to organize. We no longer need a building for a library. We need a network. And then I think that it's very important that we, particularly with the educational institutions, but even through other ways, we should perhaps practice something which we've labeled in the past as building clinics or housing clinics. I think every university department of architecture should actually open a little shop in low-income areas and offer advice. This is one of the reasons why 𝐋𝒐𝙠𝒆𝒧𝒊𝙘𝒚 was successful. That every time I've been there 3 or 4 times while it was being built some 30, 40 years ago, when the staff, the officials were walking through households, used to call them and say, "Sir, ये हम ऐसा कर रहे हैं, ये ठीक है, इसको क्या करें, वो हमारा कॉन्ट्रैक्टर ये कहता है." अभी हमारे जो बिल्डिंग इंस्पेक्टर्स हैं, उनको तो कोई पास आने ही नहीं देता, पार से पैसे खिला के उसको भगा दो तो अच्छा है. So we need to have a presence in these areas as professionals. We need to be there to observe. And that brings me to my last one, which I've called localize. We need to get the localities involved. We need to have the Mohalla committees involved or form Mohalla committees for this purpose. We need to build a knowledge both from the bottom up, not just from the top down. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Babar Saab. We would not have ended, in a way that the way you are putting it, everything right and summarizing that what should be way forward. And taking your last suggestion, the first, let's convert this session in some kind of clinic also. And for Waseem Bajwa Saab, that we'll be opening the session. I can see a lot of that attendees also and an amazing list of even participants and scientists who are actually participating. I can see the name of Dr. Adil Ghayur. I know that he's a famous Pakistani scientist and right now joining us from Australia. We can see Asghar Naeem Saab, who had been supporting Waseem Saab. I can see Izhar Saab. I can see Ms. Sania Zohra. So my technical team, if they can allow attendees also that they can show the faces and start directly asking the question or at least suggest, putting a suggestion. But first, I would like to give the floor to Waseem Saab because right now for the federal government, this session is most important. So Waseem Saab, you got a lot of professional experts right in front of you. If you would like to ask any question or seek support, so I am giving the floor to you, going ahead and asking the question or seeking support. Sir.
Thank you, Brad. It was a very wonderful and useful session. It couldn't have been without your support from the Punjab Affordable Housing, because you just took the lead and fortunately we got what we are looking at. There are a number of things, in fact, what already been mentioned by our seniors, our experts in the housing sector. The policy, in fact, to what extent we can stretch this policy document. I understand that the input from the provinces should be taken into account and particularly with regard to the provincial perspective from different provinces, Sindh, Balochistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Punjab. Every province has a different perspective. So I agree to this extent that we should at least incorporate the provincial perspective in the housing policy as well, so that they can develop on that perspective within their own dynamics, within their own setup and whatever the system and the geographical have within the province. Secondly, as far as the housing shortage is concerned, I agree this figure 10 million, 9 million or 12 million, it is always debatable. So at right now, sorry to say, we don't have any data source on which we can account for, but we are just having a figure which we have taken from some sources, whether it is UN Habitat, whether it is UN World Bank or from our source, our housing surveys and our the Bureau of Statistics. So obviously we will quote that sources. So the things have been covered by and large in all aspects. So rather, I'll be listening more, Imran, to the people, their specific comments, their specifics with regard to the way forward, that how we just make this policy more inclusive and so that it may transform into the operational aspect what we are looking at, into the form of a program, into the form of a project, what the other provinces are doing. Another important aspect with respect to the institutional framework and number of things we receive from the input with regard to the institutional capacity building and other things, that obviously we will incorporate. So we just move forward. I will not take much of the time. We will listen to the people, and wherever you need me to address, I am there. And all the panelists, they can answer, I can answer. So we are on with it. Thank you, Imran.
I think the session has just, heated up, so we can all stretch it 20-30 minutes more, because right now we would like to bring a lot of other voices also, and then ask our panelists also to continue to pitch in. But again, our session had been till now sounded quite a mannerist. That's why I especially requested Miss Saida Sani Zohra that at least she could bring us very important woman perspective also in development of national housing policy and similar policy. So, Ma'am Sani, if you can just take a couple of minutes of bringing something which we are missing. Yeah, ma'am.
Thank you, Imran Saab, for having me. I think I'm audible. ये तो बात आपने बिल्कुल सही कही कि आज actually particularly I also missed Dr. Fariha and Lala. I wanted to listen to them. And it was very heartening to listen to many of the other panelists. पहले तो हम बहुत से लोगों को तो सुनते रहते हैं, बाबर साहब को, नोमान साहब को, उनके पॉइंट्स खास तौर पे मुझे ये लगता है कि उनको आपको एक खास तौर पे इन्फोग्राफिक में कन्वर्ट करके तो आपकी पॉलिसी पेज के ऊपर, प्रोजेक्ट के पेज के ऊपर भी आपको इसको लगाना चाहिए, क्योंकि ये वो वाले पॉइंट्स हैं जो हर दफा बताए जाते हैं और ये हमेशा वैलिड रहते हैं। दूसरा ये है कि कुछ चीजें जो बड़ी अच्छी लगी वो ये थी कि इट वाज वेरी हार्टनिंग टू सी दैट सम ऑफ जो हम एकेडमिकली पढ़ते हैं, प्रमोट करते हैं अपने लेक्चर्स में, अपनी एक्सरसाइजेस में यूज करते हैं, उनको इंक्लूड किया जा रहा है इनटू पॉलिसी डॉक्यूमेंट। लाइक आपने डिसएडवांटेज जो लोग हैं, जो स्पेशल नीड्स के लोग हैं, उनको इंक्लूड करना। Particularly, I myself personally going through that kind of lifestyle, so I am now facing those kind of challenges जो कभी हमने देखे नहीं थे। लेकिन अगर देखा जाए तो एक जो टाइम लाइन में देखती हूँ 2010 से लेके अब तक की, जब से हमने अर्बन यूनिट में फर्स्ट टाइम जब हाउसिंग पे सेमिनार किया था, तो उन सारी चीजों के ऊपर आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ग्रेजुएट करते करते हम उस लेवल पे आ गए हैं कि हम टीओडीज और लैंड पूलिंग और कॉम्पैक्ट डेवलपमेंट और मिड राइजेस, हाई राइजेस की बात एटलीस्ट एक्सेप्ट करने लग गए हैं या पॉलिसी में इंक्लूड करने लग गए हैं। तो ये चीज बड़ी हार्टनिंग लगती है। लेकिन उसके साथ साथ जो मेरी एक ही पर्टिकुलर सजेशन है, जो ऑफ कोर्स इस वक्त हाउसिंग पॉलिसी के फ्रेमवर्क से ज्यादा रिलेटेड तो ज्यादा नहीं है, लेकिन मुझे जो ज्यादा क्लियर रहता है वो ये कि पॉलिसी डॉक्यूमेंट पहले भी अच्छा था और उसको मजीद जो है वो रिफाइन किया गया है, बहुत इम्प्रूव किया गया है और मजीद भी हो जाएगा। लेकिन इसकी जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन है उसके लिए जो हमें एक होलिस्टिक और एक हायरार्किकल फ्रेमवर्क चाहिए, एक काइंड ऑफ जिसमें लेजिस्लेशन के सारे पीसेस को आप इकट्ठे रखते हैं, फेडरल थ्रू लोकल लेवल्स एंड स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम अ पॉलिसी एंड उसको जब ट्रांसलेट करते हैं इनटू एक्शनेबल आइटम्स, तो वो वाली जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन है, मुझे लगता है कि आई थिंक साइड बाय साइड हमें इस वक्त अर्बन एंड रीजनल प्लानिंग फ्रेमवर्क के ऊपर ज्यादा मेहनत करनी चाहिए, ताकि ये जो पॉलिसी डॉक्यूमेंट जब बने तो इसकी जो हाउ पार्ट और व्हेन पार्ट है उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने में और शेप देने में हमें कोई एक होप भी नजर आए। काइंडली मुझे लगता है कि हम वही वाली बात है कि हम बिट्स एंड पीसेस में तो एफर्ट कर रहे हैं, लेकिन ये होलिस्टिकली हमें कब नजर आएगा? तो वो आई वुड बी वेरी वेरी इंटरेस्टेड इन सीइंग कि हम एक अर्बन एंड रीजनल प्लानिंग फ्रेमवर्क जो है पूरा उसको लेके आए और उसके अंदर हम उसके सारे पीसेस पूरे करें, इंस्टीट्यूशंस, right kind of institutions, right kind of professionals, and all kind of inclusion to be seen. So थोड़ा सा off-sided है, not my comment is not directly on the housing policy contents, लेकिन इसकी implementation और overall जो हमें urban और regional सिनेरियो में जो हमें डेवलपमेंट देखनी है वो उसके बगैर नहीं हो पाएगी. So with this, thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Actually, half of the panelists, including Waseem Saab, me, myself, and others, are representing government. So basically, it's our responsibility. We have taken the notes, and definitely you'll see the implementation. Before that, I can see the admin hand raised. Before that, I go to that, I can see some of the interesting questions in the Q&A panel. So if our panelists can see the question and can volunteer which question belong to what, but particularly I am liking one question that I'll actually ask Dr. Nasir Javed to respond. That question is from Sajid Mahmood, and we have not touched that. That is that he's asking, what will be the health and safety measures will be taken in the policy? How awareness will be provided to the households? So I think very important the way we started looking at the national to the provincial to ANP. So this question is asking that the actual household citizen, how we can engage them. So Dr. Nasir Javed, I think you are the right person who can respond, actually help Waseem Saab and us to actually reaching to the ground level. Dr. Saab.
Thank you very much, Imran. I think not only health and safety, but all other aspects need to be talked down with the communities and the citizens and the households. So health and safety, yes, of course. I believe this is mentioned somewhere in the policy as well. But we really need to add, and especially in that, the role of the contribution and probably discussion with the 1122 people as well, because there are very serious issues, especially if we are going vertical. The issues of earthquake and fire hazards. I've seen very good, important plazas in Islamabad where the fire exits have been blocked by giving these stalls on rent. If you want, I can actually quote those plazas in Islamabad. So health and safety is a very serious issue. However, as I commented in the policy as well, there are two ways. One is that the government starts implementing all those health safety measures, and the other in many countries is कि mandatory हो जाती है insurance building की, अगर it is more than 4 stories or it's a multi-story and जो condominium act के तहत उसमें जब इंश्योरेंस मैंडेटरी कर देते हैं तो इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज इंश्योर, क्योंकि उनके इंटरेस्ट में होता है कि all the health and safety measures are taken properly. So I believe this aspect, as well as talking to the citizens, of course, is most important. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Edmund has raised a hand. And Edmund, my request is that can we directly hear from the participant that will make our seminar more inclusive instead of that me and only few people, speaking. And Edmund, over to you, please.
Imran, if you allow me, may I
Yes,
comment?
Waseem Saab, yeah.
Just a
We
couple
are
of
actually
things.
giving the floor to Waseem Saab. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. एक हमारी बड़ी जरूरी बात हो रही थी with regard to the implementation mechanism. That implementation mechanism has been taken care of in the housing policy, and we have tried to make it time bound. We can just deliberate on it further. Rest, how to implement it? There are 4 or 5 things which we need to do, because earlier, because of positive time, I cannot deliberate on it. There are a number of acts, laws, regulations which the provincial governments have to make, and for that the federal government is taking the lead. अभी डॉक्टर नासिर साहब ने जो बताया कॉन्डो लॉज के हवाले से, we are already in the process of making condominium law, and that can be replicated by all the governments. Same is the case with the Urban Regeneration Act, Urban Renewal and Urban Regeneration Act. Then RERA. RERA is a very functional model. In UAE and in Gulf and a number of countries they have adopted, even in Malaysia. Financial models can be further toned down to the provincial levels, then land acquisition and database. So these are the things which will help in the implementation of this policy. Obviously, with regard to the institutional mandate, we have to fix the responsibility, whether it is a development authority, whether it is a municipal body, whether it is provincial government. So everyone should have a clear mandate and responsibility to deliver when we come at the operational level. One more thing with regard to the private sector, which Mr. Shoiab, he was mentioning, that is very important, ANP and ANC contribution. So we can engage Pakistan Council of Town Planners or Architects, and we should also engage Pakistan Engineering Council for that. With regard to the last question, high rise and health issues. Babar Saab has given a very cogent proposal with regard to the slow rise, that we should not immediately go. And obviously, health and safety standards have to be implemented by the provincial government. So just a little just comment from my side.
Edmund, you want to come in, so I can see your hand, please.
Imran Sahab, in policy, we have clearly addressed health and safety at multiple levels, so that even marginalized communities, through building control regulations, those are going to be addressed. So it has clearly addressed in the society, in the policy.
So we'll be actually now moving toward the conclusion, but a couple of questions which are still good in Q&A. One is that I will actually request Dr. Noman, because he's still with us, if he can respond. That is that definitely the houses will provide it as per the number of households requirement, and accordingly social amenities will be constructed and provided. Their question is that how overcrowding, encroachments in the provided schemes will be managed to avoid mismanagement in the schemes. So this is also an issue that from the private sector, public sector, schemes are built, but then they are mismanaged. So she's talking about mismanagement or post-development scenario. Noman Sahab, if you would like to enlighten us on that.
Thank you, Imran Sahab. I think it's a very important question, and the experiences that we have seen coming from both the schemes that were planned under the overall supervision of urban development authorities
yes,
in different cities in Pakistan, as well as the schemes that evolved as cooperative societies. Both of them actually offer very useful insight. In many cases, it was considered necessary to provide the housing stock completely compatible with the social amenities and physical infrastructure at the time of occupancy. Whereas the other option that we saw was that the provision of physical infrastructure and amenities would be gradually provided, matching with the scale of occupancy. And that made somehow the overall process of utilization rational and efficient. In some cases, we saw that the housing schemes were developed without having occupancy at the starting point, and with the infrastructure and services that were provided, they started falling apart. And obviously the right value for the investment that had gone into it that could not be utilized. In a different scenario, what we see is that when you have housing stock developed and what Babar Sahab was calling as slow rise development, the overall rules, regulations, building codes were adjusted according to certain type of needs that evolved periodically and spontaneously. And in some cases, the results were useful. I identify three important challenges in this scenario. The first thing is that there has to be a mechanism of incorporating the local needs by way of actual assessment from the neighborhoods and schemes where it is undertaken, because I think that the outcomes of one scheme may not necessarily be very relevant in the other situations, because the contextual peculiarities in many cases are different. The other thing is that the capacity of local institutions, especially at the union council or union committee level, that's very important, because these are the local government units that deal with the day-to-day management and maintenance situation of our urban neighborhoods. However, they appear to be the most helpless and unempowered when it comes to the capacity to deliver services. So that may be a point of consideration. And thirdly, the building regulations that basically provide the regulatory environments for our neighborhoods, they have to be periodically examined. We find that most of the building regulations that we have usually happen to be very prescriptive in nature. They specify dimensions as a means to control the overall built environment, whereas across the world, we find that the building regulations have now become very much performance-based, and they're not necessarily restricted by applying specific dimensions to control built environment. So definitely overcrowding and other type of menaces that our neighborhoods face, they would all be well taken care of if there is a possibility to adapt anomalies, and also an open and transparent mechanism to deal with the specific challenges that the specific house owners and house occupants actually face. and conflict resolution is done in a transparent manner. So these were some of my submissions. Thank you.
So just next 4 or 5 minutes, if everybody can just, absorb this such a long session. But one of the connected question, I think Khurram Saab and Shoaib Saab is the right person to put a bit of, perspective on that, because you are the guys who are working with the developer. The question is, what are the implementation and operational challenges faced during the execution of housing project? So I think Shoaib Saab and Khurram Saab, you're leading your own private ANP firms. You can actually throw some light on that. So Shoaib Saab, you can come first, then Khurram Saab, yeah, please.
Okay. Anyone? So in my perspective, for example, Pakistan Engineering Council, that is an appropriate institution which can take up this matter. Because buildings are constructed by contractors which are registered with Pakistan Engineering Council. So they can certify building materials, for example, modular components and low-cost housing prototypes, if these are developed and tested, so that they can be implemented across the regions. And the approval mechanism should be linked with the with the approval of Pakistan Engineering Council test results or something like that, certificate from them. And whenever such prototype is developed, we should develop a registry of verified suppliers and vendors, so that no repeated test requirements are not required. And I also mentioned earlier that design standardization, this is also required, especially at the provincial level, because all the regions of Pakistan, they are different. So we need to be very much specific to region-specific housing templates.
Right. Khurram Saab, if you would like to also actually share some of the challenges, maybe from the government side or any other agencies while implementing, executing the housing projects.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me? Imran, basically, when we are talking about private sector and development of housing at private sector, what at policy level we need to introduce to establish escrow accounts, because what's happening right now, it's very unregulated when it comes to pre-sale and sale of housing projects. Normally, developer, what they do, it's a very common practice in Pakistan, they take seed money, hard-earned money of public, and then they never come back, and after years and decades, they don't develop those projects. And then the second important aspect which will boost construction of housing sector, that is availability of construction finance. In Pakistan right now, due to 𝐋𝒤 is so high, it is almost impossible to secure a construction loan and develop such projects through banking institutions. So we need to also provide a certain level of facilitation for timely completion of these projects with the availability of housing construction finance. Because what happens, people do start projects, they look very attractive, very innovative ideas, but when it comes to a lack of financing, the projects get abandoned and they never get completed. Even in some government big institutions, they failed in the past. Cooperative society failed, and even some private level developers, they failed as well. So we need to start providing the housing construction finance, and at the same time we need to secure the end user by introducing escrow account. All over the world it's happening. It's not just that the developer, they just take all the money and they never come back, and they are getting they are capitalizing those money by investing overseas and even by investing within the bank. So we need to introduce and we need to regulate this sector. Thank you.
So as we move to the
just a little chip in. I just want to add in what Khurram and Shoaib have said. As far as private housing
it will be
schemes
better that
concerned,
I will be requesting you and the last floor to conclusion. So maybe that we are coming to you. So that we will be ending on your remark. So
सिर्फ
just
इसके वाले से एक मिनट सिर्फ ले रहा हूँ इमरान.
right, please sir.
सिर्फ ये वो जो issue है वो that issue can be addressed through RERA. We are already made an act for that जो before हम बात कर रहे थे. And secondly, construction finance is far more important even than mortgage finance. अगर आप construction finance नहीं करेंगे, housing stock नहीं बढ़ेगा, we cannot move forward. Thank you. That's it.
Right. So thank you very much. So for a bit of swag, I think a lot of panelists are actually leaving us. So if everybody can put the camera on, we would like to just take a beautiful headshot. Because everybody was looking in the camera, no need to shy. It will be really helpful. And my admin team back in the headquarters, if they can just take the snap, because everybody's looking beautiful. So we would like to bring everybody in screen. Meanwhile, I'll request Waseem Sahab also that I'll be actually looking towards him to end and giving us a concluding remarks. Two of the things which actually I saw in a chat, so I'll be just quickly speaking on that. One was that question was why Gilgit-Baltistan was missing. We are sorry for that. Gilgit-Baltistan is very close to our heart. Actually, it was a bit of challenge of bringing panelists from other provinces also. And a lot of panelists came as a volunteers. That's why probably nobody could come from the Gilgit-Baltistan. We'll be looking forward for any volunteer from the GB to accommodate in next upcoming panel. Another important question was that you guys are not speaking about construction material, innovation in the technology and that kind of stuff. So I think Dr. Adil Ghayur is also there, and in Pakistan, we are experimenting with modular housing and so many other housing technologies and construction material also. So as Babar Sahab was mentioning, it's important in moving forward that not only us, rather so many other institutions, department, for instance, who had been part of today's talk, they can also take lead, pick themes and start arranging these kind of sessions. And I think that kind of a collaborative activity is going to build that ecosystem, which is very important of moving the agenda forward. So everybody's here. Ms. Durre, if you can take a screenshot. And meanwhile, I'll be requesting Waseem Saab to formally conclude today's session. Over to you, Waseem Saab.
Thank you very much, Imran. It was a very excellent session. Just for the sake of repetition, I'm saying, because we have been unable to do it that you have done, mashallah. So just by concluding the arguments, different suggestions which have been given to us to refine, to improve this housing policy, I just move forward with some of the suggestions, and other suggestions that are also valuable, but some of the suggestions, they mainly go to the program and the project part. We will definitely add, we will just add a spin on it in the housing policy. I just move forward with the Dr. Nasir Javed. He is very categorically explained, asked about the policy timelines and demographic and socio-economic. With regard, obviously, we just move forward with the specific measures. Regarding Dr. Noman, a very good perspective over the Sindh and Karachi, and we have to address the land supply mechanism. Nadir Saab has again mentioned about the policy measures in quantifiable terms, and very good suggestions with regard to the land database, geotag, and housing dashboard. That is very good. That will help us just to move forward with the implementation mechanism. Waqas from Balochistan, very excellent idea and very pertinent with regard to the Balochistan issues that pertain to climate resilient, marginalized groups and internally displaced persons. That is a unique situation which need to be addressed with regard to the Balochistan perspective. And obviously, then move forward with the community-led planning and tribal integration. That is also very important. Yaqoob Khan from KP, he just explained the model which was developed with the previous government that need to be refined. We just don't have to reinvent the wheel. What has already been done, we just capitalize on that. And in this regard, obviously, we will move forward with the mechanism for the public-private partnership and other things. Again, RERA, I have mentioned that we will move forward. Regarding Shoiab Saab, we very well understand the role of the firms with regard to the design innovations, and we will also move forward with all the concerned planning institutions who are at the regulatory regulatory level and the implementation level, whether it is Pakistan Engineering Council, whether it is Pakistan Council of Architects and Town Planners in Punjab Urban Unit, and all those who are working on it, that should be have a collaboration. Babar Mumtaz Saab has very categorically, in an excellent manner, concluded all the things that gave us the way forward, particularly the definition of affordable and the shortage of housing. That is very important. Is other housing clinics and the role of academia. In the preparation of this housing policy, we tried to just assimilate all the people from the policy side, from the academia, from the operational side. But it is very important to have a continuity in that respect. We should establish a journal. We should have a housing knowledge bank. That is important. So by all these different suggestions, I've just given a conclusion. And another aspect that we should, if you like, we can incorporate these suggestions and we can share it again, and we can have another meeting. Maybe during this month or in the next month, Prime Minister will be seeking a presentation from us on national housing policy, and it is a time-bound activity. We have to conclude it by 30th March, but we have extended it. And thanks to you, all of you, your contribution, which was lacking, in fact, this document, that will enable us, that will help us to strengthen it more, and we can put it forward to the federal government at the highest level, to the cabinet, and then obviously this input will just make our case strong. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Please.
Thank you very much, dear participants who had been with us for at least 3 hours. And you know that the guys you can see on the screen, we call them housing gurus. And now you would have actually witnessed why they are called experts and gurus. Thank you very much. This session would not have been actually so inspiring if all the panelists would not have been linked. Then we are thankful to all the government departments, agencies whose representation came, then academia, the UMT, NED, NUS, that their participants coming. And the last, my own team, that behind doors, there had been so much coordination, supporting work, requiring for coming up with this kind of amazing thing. So we would not have been here if I didn't have that kind of amazing support behind my back. Thank you, everyone. And definitely that, as Waseem Saab has concluded, this is the first step. We'll continue to convene thematic by thematic areas and holistically also, and support each other, provinces and federal government. Thank you very much. We will be leaving now. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Allah Hafiz.
Thank you very much.